What's going on YouTube? I can't even finish it.
Oh man,
We need to just put in the review bra like intro.
I have the same intro that I got to change up every episode.
Review.
it's your boy back at it again with another Taco Bell review.
Well, you got to start it off with a clap, and then you greet everybody as if you're all friends in a room.
That's like, yeah, I guess so.
What's his? He has like an actual intro too. It's report of the week's food review. It's something like that.
Yeah, I remember that guy.
His distinct thing.
Yeah, I haven't watched one of his videos in so long. I just have no interest. Like I love how he reviews fast food. I don't eat.
Dude, I haven't seen that guy's videos in like 5 years, maybe.
Still pumping them out,
Maybe
man.
my wife watch them.
Every once in a while, I'll see one of his be popular, coinciding with like some new fast food. It's kind of like the gun and gear industry, where like all of a sudden you'll just see someone appear out of nowhere because of some bing bing wahoo like new toy, and they're like, "Oh yeah, look."
All right, we'll try that. Tyler, go give her a try. Give the intro a try.
I have no idea what he says. I would have to Google.
No, you have to make up your own right now on the spot.
You're watching podcast number 42069.
Yeah.
This is the teams.
Long live the brotherhood.
Yeah, so we got the three boys are here, and we got Jeremy back from last year from Everyday Citizens Tactical.
He is the food review this time.
We're gonna review him.
Yeah.
So yeah, in case maybe some of the guys don't cross-pollinate the podcast or don't remember from last time because we got too autistic too quickly.
Know that the audience cannot listen to one of these podcasts without Subway Surfers open.
Yeah.
And like a Family Guy compilation. While they're playing Brick Blast. So you're gonna have to reintroduce yourself, man.
Yeah,
that's all right. My name's Jeremy. I started and own and operate ECT, Everyday Citizens Tactical. Got my own podcast over there, but every once in a while I like to come over here and be a guest on other folks' podcasts. So thanks for having me, guys. Hopefully we're going to let the autism out of the box tonight and see how deep of rabbit holes we can go down. I expect the feds to show up. Anyway,
they're busy.
Yeah, they're too busy, man.
Busy. Nobody's been arrested yet, so.
Oh yeah, fair enough.
That's a whole rabbit hole. Backstory of myself: went into the Marine Corps right after high school. I was a pogue first, but I was a somewhat useful pogue, being a radio operator. And
nice.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. Then I went over to the MC security side, did some cool and then some very average things there. Got out in March of 2020. It was a great time to start a new life and find a job and, find a house and everything. There was no problems in the world.
That was a rough time.
It was a real rough time. I was discharged from the Marine Corps on the day the federal lockdown started nationwide.
What a day to start, dude. Yeah. I'll never forget that time. We could have a whole podcast about me reminiscing about how fucking rough that time was.
Yeah.
Dude, you know what's so funny is like I'll talk to people, like I'll play video games with guys that I'll talk to like online or whatever. And I always forget now that I am UNC status. And they'll be like, yeah, I was in middle school when COVID started. And I'm like, wow.
I feel so bad for those guys, man. You have no idea. We have not yet seen the ramifications of COVID. Like, honestly, all of us here have lived through it, like, as adults, except maybe Joe. But,
I don't know. My wife's a school teacher, and she can see it, the kids in school now.
No, they're desocialized. And I, as a cop, granted, not in this jurisdiction, not in the U.S. where, like, most people are listening, but the lockdowns are global, man. It's one of those weird things that you can call, like, a global phenomenon unless you lived in, like, bumfuck Namibia or some shit.
Sure.
But like, I know we want to get to some other things, but because COVID was brought up, I got to say, like, people being desocialized so heavily and then having to lean into the internet so hard has just been very weird. And you see As an example, I've had interviews that like as with suspects that are young and like they're weird, man.
Yeah, and then because like after I got out, I jumped into the fire service, and now I'm fire medic, and so then I got to see COVID from that side as well, and you see it with people now, and you see it with patients and people with mental health issues and
Oh
social
man,
anxiety
horrible,
issues, and
horrible.
it's pretty rough, especially the more urban you get.
Well, imagine living a life where you see people every fucking day, and that's everyone, right? Almost everyone sees people every day. You see someone. You leave your house, you see someone,
Mm-hmm.
and then especially in an urban environment, like a dense urban environment. Like imagine being a New Yorker and you just don't see. You go from seeing like thousands of people a day to like not seeing anyone.
See,
I,
I don't
I
understand the whole process, and maybe it's just because I didn't follow many of the lockdown rules.
I didn't either. Well,
I just don't get the big
that
the
that
funny
first
thing
day
is,
that first day of lockdown, just to quickly, just because you said it, that first day of lockdown, I was living in New York at the time, and I rode my motorcycle with my buddy. I had just built it, and it was a huge piece of crap. Um, and so my buddy's bike was a piece of crap too. But like I live like probably 40 minutes from the city at the time, and the day of the lockdown, the first thing we did was drove straight into Manhattan, and dude, it was like being in like a movie. Like there's nobody, dude, just like cruising around streets I've never like seen like that before in my life. It was just like you basically had like run of the whole city. I don't know where everyone was. It was crazy, but it
Yeah,
was like some from like a apocalypse movie.
I don't even remember the first day. I do remember
I remember the
being at
panic.
work.
I was panicked as well. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I was freaked out.
Well, so this was actually an interesting thing was that when the first reports of it happening in China occurred, I think that a lot of people that are in this general realm of things started like prepping decon kits and gas masks and stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
that's when I bought my first gas
I had
mask.
a full fucking Seaburn kit.
Yeah, dude, that's literally when I bought my first gas mask because I went to a surplus store by me, and they had M40 gas mask for sale, and it was a small, and I needed a medium, and I was like, that's all I can get, and it's gonna work. So I got that and a couple of 40 mil filters for it. I mean, I still have it, but it
I
was like I was worried, and then once it started coming to the U.S. and there was because one of our buddies at the time, he knew like he had a weird like situational awareness about like Asian occurrences, and so he just always knew what was going on over there. And he was explaining, he's like, no, the only people that are actually reporting getting sick and dying and stuff are like old people and like infants,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's really not a big deal. And everyone else just kind of brushed him off, and they're like, no, dude, you don't know what you're talking about. And he was explaining it to me one night. We were talking on Discord, and he was explaining like all this stuff to me, and I was like, you know what, this actually makes a lot of sense. So at that point, I kind of realized that it wasn't really a huge deal. And then I think that for everyone else, like a little while after that, like the sensationalism of it all kind of wore down.
the problem is like the first month. So I heard about COVID in December of 2019. I was here in the Cayman Islands visiting, who are now my in-laws. At the time they weren't, but and we just had the TV on and someone was talking about some virus. It was a little blurb like, "Oh, China's got this weird virus." I was like, "Oh, wow, that's crazy." And then like we traveled soon thereafter back to Miami, and within like after a week, they started saying it was coming here, and a week after, like 2 weeks after me seeing the first report, I remember me and my wife going to like Walgreens to do groceries. We have stuff, but we don't have enough because like
Yeah.
and I made the decision to go to Walgreens because I'm like, there's going to be less people there. You go to Walmart, you go to Publix, you go to Costco or anything like that. It's full of people because everyone's trying to buy bulk right then and there. I'll eat the price. I'll eat the price differential. But if when I went to Walgreens to get like dry goods like beans, canned food, and like little things here and there, which they tend to have. If you don't care about brand, they tend to have everything you need. Um, and I was like, dude, I got home and I wiped everything down with like Lysol wipes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did the
was
same
really,
thing.
really anal about like making sure that everything was, like wash hands when you get back in, like clean everything very well, stuff like that at first.
Before it got like really big in the U.S., we were still running missions overseas for diplomatic support and all that. So we were coming back and forth through the European airports, several months before it got big in the U.S. At the end of February and March and whatnot, and we were seeing all the COVID posters up in the airports and all that, and we were like, "Look at these cowards, little sniffles." Then it came to the U.S. and it became a big deal. But I remember very specifically one day, one of the last ranges I ran medical support for, because I was an EMT in my units and we were authorized to run med support instead of corpsmen for the ranges. Somebody out on the range, and this was probably like the beginning of February, so it was kind of starting to become a thing in the U.S. Somebody on the range started coughing a bunch, and everybody on the fucking firing line came to me and was like, "Do you have masks? Do you have masks?" Like everybody wanted surgical masks to put on while we were outside on the range.
Yeah, dude.
Well, you didn't know. I can't.
No, nobody knew.
The panic for the first, I'd say, like 6 months was warranted. I can't fault anyone for that.
Everything till about June-ish, July-ish.
Yeah. Well, once the Floyd riots happened, you just kind of realize you're like, oh, dude, like
it's a game.
It's a game. It's a game. And I even got like I'll say this, it was a real virus. I got the Delta variant, and I've never been put on my ass by a flu. But that
I remember that happened. Brutal. You were putting like daily updates in Discord. You're like,
it was wrong,
dude.
Man.
They made us wear masks on the plane when I went to that jump school, and I jumped in like they would not let us jump without the masks on, and I jumped with my mask on, and it like immediately, of course, flipped up over my eyes as soon as I hit the prop wash, and I tried to rip that off from beneath my helmet strap. I'm just like, this is like, obviously I was safe because I was going to come down one way or another, but it's just like the stupidity of like the shit.
100% of
the stupidity
by the ground.
Exactly, but I'm just like, it's like illogical. We were just like, I think it was because of the aircraft, like the company that ran the aircraft, like required it. I guess there was really no way around it. They wouldn't let us on the aircraft without it.
It's a liability thing.
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, the doors are off and like wind is running through it. You know what I'm saying? I guess, but you didn't know at the time, I guess. But I didn't really care. It was just a plane thing. But yeah, that was like not cool. It was like a night jump for me because I had my eyes closed.
I think that the benefit the benefit of COVID really was though that I think that it woke a lot of people up to.
It did.
Like,
you will never
right?
Yeah,
these conversations we're having. This realm would have never grown to what it is now without COVID.
Oh, no way.
COVID led to the riots. The riots
it did kind of prep the battle space per se for like all this other stuff.
I won't say that it would have never happened, because everything, I mean, it was the political and social atmosphere was in a drastic changing form from 2016 to 2020.
Oh yeah.
I think it just escalated and moved forward some.
Well, the thing with 2020 was it was Trump's last year in office.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, last year of office, election year, riots, COVID, like it was a perfect storm. But it would have eventually happened in some manner.
I'm only convinced that the riots were as bad as they were because you had a huge population that was just stir crazy, just sitting at home, worrying incessantly on their phone. So any little cause to latch on, they just did.
Well, I think that the big thing with it too was that it really just expedited the whole thing. Like honestly too, for me, and I've talked about this a couple of times, but the thing that really got me to start actually getting with guys that were not like, one or two dudes that I already knew through the Marine Corps locally or something was, it was right before COVID that Whiskey Warrior guy that was live streaming like all the feds or the police outside of his house.
I remember that.
And at the time, it was like he was like, I'm being red flagged. They're coming to take my guns and stuff. Which it turned out that like there was an alleged domestic violence case.
Yeah, wasn't he like a piece of shit?
Potentially. I mean, I don't know how confirmed any of those claims were, but from my understanding, once everybody read into it, dude, I remember sitting in the Task Force Doomer Discord, and we were all sitting there, and somebody was like streaming like a police scanner radio, because you can get that stuff like online through some site, I don't know, but he went on it and he was getting like like all the police scanners like in the area, like all the radios, dispatch and stuff, and we were hearing like live updates about that event unfolding. And then somebody else, we were watching like we were watching it happening on Instagram, and everyone was like, whoa, this is insane. And we were all just watching it. And then that's when I texted a buddy of mine that I knew loosely online. And I mean, he lived hours away. And I was just like, hey, like this could be real. We should definitely figure out how we're going to link up at some point and just meet. And then even afterward, when we realized, like, potentially what the story that came out once it was all said and done was that I think the guy's like wife and kids came back to get some stuff because they were trying to leave because he was potentially like abusive or something, and then they were staying at like her parents' house, and then he was like harassing them or threatening them, and then they called the cops, and then he was just like drinking and handling firearms on his balcony, and then the cops were basically just waiting for him to give up. It was something like really, really silly. But
well, that brings up a good segue as to everything that happened in 2020 really didn't even start with COVID or the Floyd riots. The temperature got ramped up probably the last 6 months to a year of 2019, because we had all of the 2A sanctuary movements in Virginia. We had Trump that had banned bump stocks and pissed off the Second Amendment community. We had the giant 2A rally in Richmond, Virginia at the Capitol building, like where there was like tens of thousands of people open carrying and protests, and shot. Imagine that. So really, it was kind of like some of the actions by the right, whether it was warranted, organized, or it really meant anything to begin with. Really, they were kind of the beginning of the ramp up. They just weren't the big finale piece of it all.
When it got serious for me, right? It's like, most people, you knew the riots weren't just happening everywhere. They were happening in very concentrated urban areas. In those urban areas, they were happening in very specific locations, or like Seattle, where like it kind of spread around a bit. But I mean, you could just avoid it. Yeah, you could just all this stuff. You could just like bypass it. So it wasn't the riots. It was when the vaccination stuff started, and I'd say that was 2021 probably, when Biden was elected and he was in office. It was like, we're gonna, it was like second-class citizen and not be vaccinated, and that was when it really kind of like, that's when kind of I started not panicking, but just kind of being like, oh, like this might be some shit, dude. This is like the shit test.
I got kicked out of paramedic school in fall of 2021. I was already working full time in the fire services and EMT. But I got kicked out of paramedic school because I wouldn't get the vaccine, even though everything else that was required I was up to date on, but I wouldn't take the COVID vaccine. So then I got kicked out, and eventually I was luckily able to go back in 2024 when the requirements and everything changed. I'm sorry, 2023. I don't even remember what every time.
Three.
At this point. Probably 3, 2 years after. Maybe it was 24. Either way, I got kicked out of paramedic school, and I was like, this is bullshit. Like, this is seriously the way the world's going now. This is the life we live.
Yeah.
But I would say the biggest thing, I guess, someone hinted at it before, was like, with the whiskey stuff, is the idea of better community, the idea of organization, the idea of actually getting to know people that you live around that are like-minded. That all came from COVID and the BLM stuff. Like, it was kind of like how prior to 2020 with like T-Rex arms becoming big and Grand Thumb, like kind of owning kit and ARs with attachment and stuff, like that was like evolution 1 of gun culture. And Zage has put some of this stuff up on Instagram and talked about like the evolution of the 2A community. And then COVID happened, and then it was like the find your tribe, find your community type thing. And you've got little groups of 5 to 10 guys, and then it's somewhat progressed from here. I have a lot of kind of thoughts on that, but it is trending in the right direction. But that, I think, is the most beneficial thing that's come of all of it.
Yeah, what do you mean, like you think it kind of lost the track a bit at some point?
I think some people, I won't say some people, I would say the majority of people, 99% of people, forgot to continue the evolution of it all. The Find Your Tribe stuff was big because it was like, hey, I'm going to find 3 to maybe all the way up to 10 guys that live in a 2 to 3 hour bubble around me that I can confidently say I'm okay going to the woods and hiking with them with live firearms and going to the range. Maybe we'll talk about some food preparedness stuff. Maybe we'll get some 5-watt line of sight radios for our 3 hour regional gap that will cover our comms windows, even though that's not how that works at all. There was an evolution to the 2A community, and it really started to move away from just the right to bear arms, and it went towards, honestly, more the Minuteman, the militia side of things, where it's like, hey, there's an organization part to all of this. It's not just $3,500 AR builds and fancy kits. But I feel like we've stalled in that a little bit. At this point in time, people have forgot, hey, you need to keep the momentum going. And I talked about this in the most recent Instagram post I talked about, where like the mutual assistance group, the tribe kind of mindset and structure, that is the beginning of meaningful communities and organizations. That is not the end form. And a lot of people have this perception that if they have their tribe of 6 to 10 guys and they all own nice ARs and kit, that when, the 15,000 socialists from the urban metropolitan area, an hour away from you decide, hey, we're going to organize by the masses and inflict our political view amongst all of you, that somehow they're going to be safe or sufficient from any type of consequences or never-ending political lessons that we must teach ourselves throughout the warfare of history. That, hey, you organizing with 6 dudes in the woods and minding your own business is not how you save your way of life. That's how your way of life dies out in a corner and you are forgotten, and the bad guys win. And I think people have forgotten that.
I think that it's just the same mindset, but like a progression of people that aren't really into guns that much, or definitely not into this side of things, or like this extreme, but they get like a concealed carry permit and then they start carrying a handgun, and they might go to the range like once a year, and they're like, oh, I'm good, like I have a concealed carry permit, right? But they don't hone in things, they don't change their situational awareness, or their how they just go about things. They don't really do anything, and even get lazy carrying their gun, right? But a lot of people have that false sense of security, that are not fully aware. They get that false sense of security when they get a concealed carry permit, and whatever Smith & Wesson shield is on layaway and discount. And it's the same thing for guys in this kind of realm, where I think a lot of guys, they have friends that they are somewhat close with, right? Like they would consider them good friends, and they all have decent gear, whatnot. They may even have the same color clothes that they wear when they all get together, but it kind of gives them a false sense of security, where they're like, oh, like we'll be good because we'll just go out in the woods. Mind you, these people have never spent more than like 72 hours in the woods, let alone
and being in the woods for an extended
months at a time in the woods.
That amount of time isn't like the woods, right? Like, yeah, you're in the woods, but like you now have to do you're kind of on the hook to make sure everything works, and like you got to figure out where your next meals are coming from. You got to figure out how you're gonna keep the lights on, if that's something you're trying to prioritize. But I wouldn't say, I'll disagree. I do think the martial side of it fizzled out a bit. But I'd say a lot of the guys, and this was kind of, I brought this up a few years ago. I said that the way forward for a lot of dudes, especially these groups, is to figure out how to financially make the group make you money, in terms of make it your job, to where you can financially support the group, but also financially support the people in it, or I was saying security companies, it might come to a head with the riots, to where businesses are going to be looking for security outfits just to make sure hey, we're not going to be there, but I want to make sure no one's coming in here and taking burning the place to the ground.
I think there's some scalability to that makes that might be possible. I guess it depends on what our different definitions of what an organization truly looks like and what we mean by organization.
Well, an organization, in my opinion, is only as like so like when you're talking about like a militarized group. Let's say like you have your militia, a militia.
Mhm.
The militia needs to not just wield like hard power; it needs to wield like soft power,
I'm so
and it
glad you
needs
brought
to
this
wield
up. I just
influence.
wrote this down.
So like, and this is why, in my opinion, the most important skill isn't going to be, and this is up for debate, but one of the most important skills a leader of a group can bring to the table is his ability to socialize, like his ability to make connections with
Yapping
people,
vindicated.
Literally.
because it's just one of those things where like and to an extent even I'd say another reason why these groups fizzled out is a few of these guys probably joined the military, especially after Trump got elected, or as Trump, they probably joined the military or they joined the police at some point afterwards. And like the thing is if you stack those existing legitimized martial organizations with your people in like a large enough scale, those organizations have to reflect your people's wishes. Like, and obviously this is administration dependent on like a large scale, but like if let's say your entire like community SWAT team is like hardcore conservative, like dog, there's going to be a point where like, hey, if you still want a SWAT team, like you're going to have to, I'm not going to say like bow to their demands, but like you're going to have to entertain their ideas, because they can just as easily say, yeah, we're not fucking doing that. And then what do you do then? And you lose, whoever's in charge loses that asset. So they have to court that. And so courting a militia is not really important, but courting the police department is, And so it's a thing where I think some of these guys just joined the organization that like they knew was going to have the legitimacy and be able to pay them, and you can always hide your like hobby under the guise of, well, I'm doing this to put food on the table, and it's like, yeah, you are, but like you're also part of this organization, and to some degree you have influence over it. Every time you talk to your coworkers, if everyone looks at the dude who's always squared away and always like doing the right thing, and they see his attributes, and then they see his success, he becomes the poster boy for success. People are going to want, every time a rookie comes in or a new guy comes in, they see this guy and they're like, I want to be like him because he's got it all figured out. And he might not have it all figured out, but he looks like he does. And he talks the talk, he walks the walk.
Yeah.
And, this is the guy to support, and organizations change.
Well, I think, and I definitely want to come back to the soft power, hard power conversation, because that's a whole topic. But you're 100% right on the leadership side of things. And I think probably part of that reason things did fizzle out was, like you said, these people, or some of these people, went and joined legitimate organizations, as we use the term legitimate, things that are recognized by governments. I think we could probably all agree at some capacity. Because being a leader of finding an organization with that, and I say organization like someone with a title, a public appearance, recruiting standards, administrative policies, SOGs, like the full shebang. That is a lot for an unpaid individual to do. Like, it's a ton, especially when you're talking about writing policy. You can't only be a guy that's good at shooting and you're in shape and you're good at socializing with people and you can recruit people. You have to know how to put legitimate and well thought out ideas and bureaucracy on
bureaucracy paper. Is such a scary word for this like group, for like this sphere, because people look at it and they immediately think like, oh, I don't want some asshole to be in charge of me and this and that. But like I forget who said it, but someone said like one of the United States military's most like powerful assets is the fact that it has a very robust and like well put together bureaucracy. Like, sure, there's a lot of paperwork and there's always a form for X, Y, and Z, but the form for X, Y, and Z means that at least to some degree this issue is addressed and it has to go to someone and it's codified to be addressed. So like whether or not, you put in a request to have your barracks room cleaned. Yeah, whether or not that gets seen or like gets like, like fulfilled, is up in the air, but the framework for it exists, and then the onus gets put on the people who are exposed to that framework. Since in a military, for example, it'd be like your battalion commander, or like your
I will
battalion sergeant major, and he's got to fucking reconcile with that. So getting to that position and being able to like influence the organization at that scale and make those decisions and be like, hey, look, I'm prioritizing this. I know I have to prioritize all these other things, but like I'm going to prioritize this for X, Y, and Z reasons, and this is like my pet project. I only have so much bandwidth for everything, but this is one of the things that's going to take up my bandwidth. And like, it could be, to some people it was DEI, and they're like, yeah, no, I'm going to make sure my DEI efforts in this organization are very like fulfilled. But for other if you get a different guy in there that doesn't care about that shit, he might be like, hey, look, I want to make sure that like family time is important, or like there's like stuff like that, like things that are much more, I want to say, like conservative leaning. Like those things become much more important. Like, no, I'm not going to jeopardize your church time. And then you buy loyalty like that, because it's like, well, Sergeant Major made sure that religion's very important to me. I have to, I want to be there every Sunday. Sergeant Major made sure that, even if we're in the field, a chaplain could come out and like, hold a service. So at least I'm getting that fulfillment, that personal important thing to me, the soldier, is being fulfilled by, the guy in charge.
And a perfect example of stuff like that you're talking about, like meaningful bureaucracy in a sense that guys can kind of, accept a little bit more, is like, hey, it's Memorial Day weekend. We have a 3-day weekend. It would be a fantastic time to do a 3-day FTX because guys are going to be off work. However, it's probably not a good idea to schedule training this weekend because you want guys to spend time with their families and do things that are not the same as everything else you require them to do the rest of the time of the year. Or saying, hey, after you have a kid, for 30 days, 60 days, whatever, missing training will not hurt your attendance standards if your organization has strict attendance standards, which it should. Yeah. Doing things like that helps relate to guys that like you said, like you're like, hey, like I understand this. I appreciate this. This makes me want to be a part of this stuff.
Well, that's even like for me, one of our guys is on a deployment. He's been on a deployment for quite a while, and I just reached out to him just to see how he was doing, and I asked if he had been, because he wasn't active. He hasn't been active in our chat at all, which and so I was like, oh, have you seen like anything that's been going on recently? Because we've been kind of revamping some stuff and talking about a lot of things. He's like, oh no, he goes, I'll be more active, and I was like, no, like I just want to know if you've seen it or not, because I can fill you in on it, but don't worry about that. Like, you have a deployment going on and you have a family. Like, focus on those first, because that's what's more important than these guys that realistically you're going to come back in a couple months and get back into it, and you're going to have stuff to share from a deployment, and you're going to have stuff to learn from things that we've figured out, and like it's all good, right? At the end of the day, you're not going to be able to be there whether you're active in the chat or not. So just focus on the important things right now, which is your job that you're trying to do in real life and your family. And I think that is like it's just being personable, right? I think that an interesting thing that I had read, which translates to this, and the interesting thing I had read recently was basically something along the lines of, the patriarchy, as we understand it, is more so a society ran by fathers rather than just ran by men. And I think that is a bit controversial to say, because at the end of the day, like, there are younger guys that just don't have kids, or they don't have families or whatnot, and even older guys, right? Like, it just hasn't worked out yet. It's not their time, whatever. But I think that once you have a family, yes, it is a huge chunk of your time that ends up getting taken out toward that. But if you're the leader of a group and you have a family and you have time taken out of your life because of that, you can still find ways to make it work, right? After they go to bed, there's time. Before they wake up, there's time to do stuff, or you can just have other people do certain tasks and, assign tasks to other people to get things done, which is the right way to do things. But, I think that people become a lot more understanding of everybody else's considerations once they have a family of their own to be responsible for. Like I couldn't now as somebody who's a husband and father, I couldn't join a group and have somebody who's even if they're more knowledgeable than me and whatnot, like that's fine. Most people are realistically, but if they're younger than I am and they or whatever, or they just don't have a family and they're trying to say like, oh, like you need to do this, you need to do that, like you need to vote this time to that. It's like, dude, like you don't understand. Like am not going to cut into my family time for anything else that isn't them, unless it's
Well,
an dire
once you have a
emergency.
family and kids, you're no longer making decisions just for yourself.
Exactly, that
You
too.
can't be selfish about it.
You can't be like, oh, the event happened, the fog is coming. I'm going to drop everything and go out in the middle of the woods and just live there with some guys that, have their scrim on. It's
And I
like,
think
no,
there's
I have a family. I'm not leaving my house.
there's a little bit of 50-50 to that. And again, I think it kind of depends on what style of an organization or what the true meaning of maybe the movement that you're politically, socially, and emotionally attached to is that while what some of you said absolutely does make sense, and that you as a leader should take greater consideration specifically for organizations that are not paid. This is pretty much all volunteer. You should take greater consideration for those with families or circumstances where maybe they take care of other family members, whatever that might be, but also balancing it with not letting people and men make excuses and use their family as an excuse not to better themselves or complete the bare minimum. Because I know
100%.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I know
Like,
tons of guys in my organization that have 2 or 3 kids, work 50, 60 hours a week. They run gardens, they attend children's stuff, and they still exceed the minimum standards. So when
Oh,
I
yeah.
see men that can do that, I absolutely hold it to those that are not doing the minimums and say, I understand it's hard, but you have to do better because you should want to do better, because in the end this is going to matter in some way. If it doesn't, then we need to stop what we're doing right now and I'll go home and just forget what we're doing.
well, I think that if you are also a husband and a father, and you have people that are saying like, oh, I don't have time to do anything because I have kids, but you're like, so do I. It's way different of a discussion at that point, because then you can come to them as a fellow husband and father of multiple kids and whatever, and a homeowner and all that stuff. All these responsibilities add up, and you can help them out in that aspect of saying like, look, like realistically, just speaking objectively as a friend that cares about you, you must not, like, you don't handle your time well, right? Everybody's situation obviously is different, and some people just 1,000% don't have the time and the capabilities to devote time to this stuff, and that's fine. Right? If you don't have the time to do this stuff, you don't have the time to do that stuff, and don't make the burden on other people when you constantly have to bail and you constantly have to cancel things because you are worked into a training plan. If your group is worth anything, there is a training plan that is created. You're worked into it, and when you have to bail like last minute or whatever, or your communication isn't good, and you use the excuse of like having family and stuff, it becomes very tiresome. And on the flip side too, I think that it is a good way to, coming from that same background, being able to look at guys and be like, look, like you need to spend more time with your wife and kids, right? There's plenty of guys that I talk to who it's like they do literally everything, and I'm like, I don't know where you get this time from. Like, how much time are you spending with your wife and kids? Which is extremely important, because at the end of the day, this is what it's all for. If you have a family, and if you don't have a family, it's all for the idea that you will have a family eventually, or other people that do have a family. Like the preservation of good is made around considerations for families, I would say.
I will say it would be a bit hypocritical of me not to bring it up. You talk about leaders with no necessarily families in place yet and setting standards and expectations and all that. I started my local organization at 23, fresh out of the Marine Corps, single, living in an apartment.
Yeah, same.
Arguably,
I did the same
arguably
thing.
not very many responsibilities, but I don't want that to dissuade people from not taking the steps of taking on leadership. You just have to understand limitations and realities. And some people do that naturally, and some people need to learn through some mistakes. But I don't want it to dissuade anybody. Like, if you don't have a family, you can't be a leader.
Also, you can. I don't know if this is directly applies to specifically starting like groups like we're talking about, but kind of what Tyler was talking about the patriarchy. There's like this whole theme kind of we're talking about fatherhood, stuff like this. Also, to consider is, you may not know what it's like to be a father, but everyone does know what it's like to be a son, right? All us men are sons of some man. And it kind of, I just had that thought, and it kind of it reminded me of in the 1970 movie Waterloo, about Napoleon coming back from exile and then regaining his forces and then going on to fight at Waterloo. Anyway, before he goes to exile on Elba, he's dismissing the old guard, and he's like, he's giving this teary goodbye, and he's like, "Goodbye, my soldiers. Goodbye, my sons. Goodbye, my children." And he's addressing guys that are older than he is.
Mm-hmm.
So, there is like, even if you are you don't have actual kids, obviously, but like when you do take a leadership role over people, I would say you could, if you don't have kids, you could read about, like, this is the thing that we're talking about, like patriarchs, right? Like it's like in like the liberal indoctrination that I had received throughout my life, I always just assumed that meant men. Like you had said, I just didn't really think about the word. But now to say it's a society led by fathers, it makes sense. But even like in a military standpoint, to a military leader, you are kind of like a son to them. You know what I mean? In a way, where they're responsible. They're responsible for you. You know what I mean?
And the key piece with that, though, is like the maturity and understanding, right? Like I think that the problem, as a former younger guy, is that we don't always, we don't always have the understanding of these things. And like, to Jeremy's point, right? Like when I started a group, I was dating my wife at the time. We were just, we weren't engaged or anything yet. I was living in an apartment alone. I had all the time in the world, and I had just gotten like a decent job. So, I was able to be a little bit more free with spending and not have responsibilities and stuff. And, one of the guys was like freshly married. And it was a very important thing for me to understand when he would say like, "No, I can't do that because, I have to spend time with my wife." That it's not like, because I see that a lot like online, mostly on like Twitter and stuff. Twitter's terrible with this stuff. But like guys will be like, "Oh, like you're just going to bend over backwards for your wife." It's like, yeah, a little bit. Like, you need to make sure that everybody's happy and whatnot. And like, make sure that everything's good and all your ducks are in a line at home.
Wait a minute. We're not supposed to hate our wives?
No, actually, you're supposed to. I am telling you incorrect things because it's funny to watch people do the wrong thing. But no, it's. I think that a lot of it is the maturity, and like I think that for somebody like that had been in a leadership position already with guys underneath you that may have already been married and whatnot, right? Guys that have been in the military in some regard, or law enforcement. I'm sure that that's a thing. It's a little different, but you get out and you're like, okay, I already understand what it's like when someone's like, "Hey, I have an emergency going on with my kids. I have an emergency with my wife. Like this stuff is going on. I have these marital things that I need to attend to, these childhood things that I need to do, whatnot." It definitely gives you an understanding on how to lead those people, even if you don't have that. But it also prepares you for when you do end up becoming a father and a husband and whatnot. So, to your point, no, I'm not going to dissuade anybody from starting a group. I think it's easy if you are if you are single and you're taking charge of a group, to have other people that also don't have kids at a minimum, or already have some of that experience of knowing what it's like, or just being understanding that people with different circumstances are going to have different amounts of time that they can dedicate to certain things, or different amounts of like money that they can dedicate to certain things. Because even then, like, if you're married, but you don't have kids and you don't have a house, and somebody's unmarried and they have a house, it's like that's completely like there's so many differences already right there. Hey, I can't come out because I have contractors coming over this weekend to work on my house. I have this stuff going on. Hey, I have no money because I just had to replace my roof, like stuff like that.
We'd
And
always
it's
joke.
important,
Yeah, go ahead.
and it's important to communicate what
Yes.
expectations are to people of all these different backgrounds, old, young, full-time job, 5 kids, no kids, like the whole thing. Because if they're just kind of constantly wondering, like, why am I getting haggled? Like, I don't like what am I supposed to be doing? Like, I'm doing my best. Like, it's going to create tension, and the organization won't last. And there needs to be wiggle room. And earlier, I think Tyler had said it, like, some people just don't have enough time. And that is absolutely true. There's nothing wrong with saying, if you're a more formal organization, there's nothing saying, like, hey, no hard feelings, but we're here to get some stuff done. And that means attending actual events. If you don't have time for it, like, we wish we could have you, but it's just not going to work. I'm very big on the idea of this is not a Facebook group message. Like, this is a doing organization.
Mhm.
And so if you say, hey, we have to attend a minimum standard of this many events over this many days, this many events a quarter per se, and they may just completely drop the ball one month because the kid got sick this week, and then the contractors came over this week, and then the boss said I'd work overtime this week, and then they put a little extra effort in the next month, balance things back out, and it's like, hey, this guy is at least trying, and this guy is at least giving me effort, and I can work with that. I can work with that to the all the way to the end, and that is important to remember as, I think, a leader when you're setting up these types of organizations, especially when you're not paid. I stress that a ton to people, and I won't say I've ever really had this mentality, but you have to remember that these are volunteer groups. These are volunteer organizations. Probably nobody is getting paid outside of Gio's idea of creating companies where you might be paying guys to attend things. There's a 99% chance that you're not paying people to come to events. So you have to remember and respect that they are giving you their time. They are giving you their effort. They are hopefully spending their own money to buy equipment, maybe pay towards group dues, fun stuff, like all this kind of stuff. The way I've talked about this with my dad before, just sometimes I'll complain about things with the group, or maybe we're stalling in an area or something like that, and we're both firemen, so it's easy to conversate on. And he's like, look at your organization and look at any rinky-dink volunteer fire department around here whose sole existence is based on federal grants and bare minimum staffing, and they're scraping the bottom of the barrel of the community every year when it's levy season trying to get volunteers. Otherwise, the firehouse is going to shut down. And you're doing all of this because guys want to be here. All of this because guys believe in it. All of it because there is a higher purpose here. He's like, so just remember to take that back in perspective a little bit, and also respect the effort that is coming into everything.
Yeah. No, and realistically, like at the end of the day, if you're new or you're experienced or whatever, and you have a group, the two biggest things that really need to occur are two-way communication and reliability.
Mm-hmm.
Those two things, like, screw everything else. Nothing else matters if those two things aren't there, because the two-way communication is there. Hey, we are doing something on this day. Who is able to make it? And if you're not able to make it, just say, I'm not able to make this one. Or, I am unsure, but I will let you know as soon as I can. Or, yes, I can make it. And whatever that is, like, be able to maintain that, right? If you say that you're going to be there, you need to be there.
Mm-hmm.
If something changes, whether you say like, oh, I can't make it, or you can make it, or you're unsure, something changes either way, communicate that. Oh, hey, I can make it now. Right? I'm ready to show up and do things. Or no, hey, I can't make it anymore. This thing came up. Right? That happens all the time. And like, you know, I don't have necessarily like a strict you know, number assigned to anything. I kind of like I kind of go off the vibes of it, right? Like, hey, you know, it's been a year, you haven't shown up to anything, or hey,
You're
you
cool
know,
shit.
you've only shown up once or twice, and you really haven't had a reason not to, right? Because sometimes there's just scheduling conflicts all the time, and it's like, look, man, obviously, like you're too busy right now. That's fine. Just I'm gonna remove you from the group chat and all that stuff, and then when you're, you know, things level out and things become a little bit more you know, manageable, or you know, you can guess what's going to happen a little bit better, predictable, then just let me know. I'll let you back in, and as long as you can still maintain the physical standard and everything, then like you're fine, right? And but the two-way communication and the reliability is huge. Like I would argue that those two things are like the absolute necessity for anybody.
Yeah. Communication is something I hit on as a major talking point during recruiting meetings. Is I can work with so much more, and I can work with minimum standards or even sometimes just a little below if it's for a short period of time, as long as you're communicating with me. If you're just in the dark and you're not like ever answering polls or talking in the group chats or just saying like, hey man, I'm trying to get to something, but this is going on in life. Like if you're just distanced, it's not going to work. Like you got to have the communication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'd like to return to Gio's topic earlier about soft power and hard power about organizations.
Go for it.
This is a huge topic that I believe both S2 and specifically Mike Shelby has hit on a lot recently. And I think this is part of that evolutional growth that I was talking about earlier with organizations, is getting them to understand this. And I'd be guilty if I said a little bit in the beginning, 2020, 2021, I didn't understand this entirely either. I was very much just tactically minded and was like, we are going to make the greatest, you know, rifleman squads, rifle platoon, whatever it is that my area has ever seen. And that's going to be the answer to everything. And it's not. For those that don't know, soft power and hard power. Soft power is the idea that there's the bureaucracy, there's the relationships, there's the social dynamic between you and everybody else in your community within reason. Your local EMA, your local churches, your local fire and police, the teachers, the business owners, the whole aspect of it. The social power is the bureaucracy and everything. And then hard power is what it very much means. It means the action phase. And obviously from the tactical aspect, we mean, you know, combative violence, force of action. You cannot run these organizations off of hard power alone. Your recruiting will die down because not everybody is in this, at least initially, to do tactical stuff. I'm a firm believer that organizations like this should be dual purpose of both disaster response and tactical response. But you can do a lot in recruiting when you really hit on that disaster response side. But if you're just like, hey, we're just doing tactical stuff and that's it, and our whole training schedule for the year is always tactical, and just you're not going to get as many guys. You're going to burn guys out. You're not going to pique new interest. Like there is a limit to that. Plus, the organization does not grow. We live in a society that is not.
Whoa.
Uh-oh.
Oh, shit.
There's everybody.
We're back.
Guys, I was on a roll. No, I'm just kidding.
Damn.
As I was saying before, you're not going to be able to grow an organization on hard power alone. You have to hit the soft power stuff. People have to know that they can trust you. People have to know that you are well-intentioned. People have to know that you're willing to work with other people. This is not Somalia. This is not, you know, the Rhodesian Bush Wars. It's not all this type of stuff where like these paramilitary warlord style stuff is going to work. You're going to get sniffed out. You're going to get arrested potentially if you're really stupid. Like there is a lot of negative consequences for both the movement that you're probably trying to push and pursue, as well as the growth of the organization, that will not occur if you do not pursue soft power. As much as we want to be arrogant at times and just say, I hate the government at all the levels, they're wasting money, they're doing this, they're doing that, there has to be some level of influence involved with all that. And if you're not getting involved to some extent, even if it's just from the social dynamic of your local businesses and churches, then when it is time, and there will be a time, not a single soul on this earth will ever change my mind, that there will be a time, whether it's 2 years from now or 20 years from now, there will be a time where your movement and your way of life is put into question, and it is fighting time. If nobody knows who the hell you are and you show up one day with a bunch of guns and go, all right, guys, I am here to lead us the way. And everyone's like, who is this goofball in mismatched camo standing in the street? There has to be the hard social bureaucracy work put into play ahead of time.
No, dude, he's got Rhodesian brushstroke on. He's based.
He's dude's based. I'd follow him. That's my intro on soft and hard power. Gio, you want to hit something up there? Anybody can chat. I don't really care.
Bevan? So, I really don't disagree. Like I said, with the social aspect of things, if you can't navigate the social, like I want to call it environment or battlefield or whatever, including the political one. I mean, at the end of the day, that's kind of the direction everyone wants to court. You know, there's different centers of gravity within at least the Western world, and they either revolve around money or politics in terms of who do I court, or influence. Sometimes it's neither. Sometimes it's just this person is, for whatever reason, influential in their community, and courting that and having a good relationship with them puts, even just like, if you're just talking about your martial group, the fact that, you know, you might be at the top of the call list for the priority call for, hey, something's going wrong. And I can't, you know, it might not even always be martial. It could just be, like you said, with disaster response. Something is going wrong, and we need a way to fix it. And sometimes it's just we need to throw bodies at it. Sometimes it's we need a more robust planning thing, or, hey, we need someone familiar with the area to help us with X, Y, Z. And so that's where your true soft power is coming from. It's not coming from your gun. It's coming from who you know.
Mm-hmm. And I will say this as well, is as much as I say, hey, the social bureaucracy, policy, administrative, all that stuff plays into it. I truly believe that the leaders of these styles of organizations that are now re-emerging through in America, you should not succumb to the political games and the political drama and the corruption and everything else that has plagued this system. I believe, and you guys can hold it to me to the day I die, as leaders of this movement and or lifestyle change, whatever it might be, we're going to call it, it is up to us to lead the system better and lead the system forward in a better manner. We have to expect better, so we must do better. And if you get into this and you start playing the soft power game, and then you just become another politician as your group leader, and you're doing these backdoor deals, and then you're getting into shady stuff, and you're abusing your rights and your power that has really been given to you by the guys that you're leading. They've chosen to, support you and back you in the pursuit of your organization's mission and the morality that you claim to have put forth. You cannot trash it. We have to move forward in a better manner, and we have to be better men.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Dude, is that so? Do you think this is kind of like how, like this kind of plays into, I don't want to just like come out and say that, but like kind of what we were discussing earlier about, not earlier on the podcast, but earlier in general about like the late, like your
say it, Joe.
Laziness, you know what I mean?
Who's late? What do you mean?
Like the kind of lazy, like I've got the guns, I've got the will, and then there's like not.
Oh, okay, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
we talked about this off from this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry, that's what I was trying to say. My bad.
Yes, there is a very painfully toxic mentality that specifically plagues the conservative part of the 2A community, and just I'd say the more conservative Republican American idealist side of the political spectrum right now, where it says, hey, it does not matter how much better, more effective, better funding, all of these radical socialist, communist, militant organizations that are in bed with the CCP when you pull back the curtains and all of this kind of stuff. And that is a rant within itself. I have entirely too much information in my head on that. People have this perception. It's like, I am a strong Republican man with a gun, and it has a Holosun red dot with 4 loaded PMags. I swear to God, the socialists will never get the better of me. By the way, I have no kit, no uniform, no buddies, no organization. But I swear to God, when it's time, I'll go outside and we'll fix this.
That's where the James Yeager quote needs to be inserted, where he goes, "If this goes 1 inch further, I'm going to start killing people."
But
that was a classic.
I'm going to insert it into this episode.
Make that the episode picture.
Make it the episode title.
I watched that live, man. I remember that happening, dude. That was anyway.
I remember. So I'm gonna use this exact story without personal details being used. Right after Charlie Kirk was shot, I was sitting at Chipotle on duty at the firehouse with my with some of the guys that are on duty with me. We're eating lunch. And I don't remember how it came up, but everybody talked about the Charlie Kirk stuff a couple days after the Charlie Kirk stuff happened. And we're talking about stuff, and I was kind of like hinting at, and I keep it pretty reeled back at the firehouse. But we were talking about that kind of stuff, and I was talking about like how dangerous the far left is getting, and how much more militarized and militant they are, and all this kind of stuff. And this guy that's on duty with me, he's probably about 10 years older than me, decently in shape guy. He's an Army vet. And he had that exact same conversation where he was just like, we have all of the guns. And he had that mindset. And I was like, buddy, they have guns too. And they're actually like killing government officials and cops and stuff with them, where ours are just sitting at home. I was like, they're dangerous. And he just like kept going on. And he was like, when it's time, we'll take care of it. I'm like, you're out of your mind.
See, the thing with the whole winning time is it's the same. So I picked up Muay Thai like in August. And, when you do martial arts and stuff, it's the same sort of like, when the time comes, I'll see red and I'll know what to do. Like you can be, there's something to be said about like the drive behind like aggression, being able to lead, like give you like a buff to your fighting ability, but like, brother, if you don't know how to throw a punch, it doesn't mean like all that aggression just goes into like a little pee slap, and it's like, all right, that's great, but
so,
like I know how to throw an uppercut leading into an elbow, like dude, you're fucked.
So is it laziness or is it okay? Well, yeah, those are kind of notes too, but
I
like,
would say
or is it actually incompetence? Like, is it both or both?
It's arrogance.
It's arrogance.
And
I think that arrogance masks incompetence as well. Because a lot of these guys that say when the time's time, I'll do it. I made the joke on Instagram the other day where it's like most guys couldn't complete a short movement to contact to their local Walmart, let alone could they plan the movement to contact to begin with.
Yeah, dude, I'm sprinting across a Walmart parking lot.
It really is arrogant.
It's like you're toast, basically,
dude.
It's like a full mile. It's like a full mile,
brother. If your plan is to sprint across the Walmart parking lot, if your plan is to sprint across the Walmart parking lot, there's already been a few failures leading up to that point. Well, before whether you can run the distance.
Isn't that movement to contact when you sprint towards the gunfire?
No, but that's
yes and no. But,
yes. But yes, but actually,
yo, we're joking around. We're just joking around.
I thought you'd be serious. I was like, I know you've done enough of this shit.
Damn, boys.
I'm going to talk to Tyler after we're done with this.
Yeah, the whole seeing red thing is so funny, and it's such an interesting phenomenon. But it's also why I like. I don't want to say like, oh, well, this is why you should join the police, because this isn't a pitch to be a cop. And if you don't want to be a cop, you shouldn't. And it's a very complicated profession, especially in the United States, where like you really do have a lot more of a life and death.
Yeah, especially if you like betray your oath and do a bunch of bullshit.
Oh yeah, but that's a whole conversation in and of itself, and it boils down to the caliber of people they're hiring. But with that, I don't know. I'm a firm believer that who are the people opposing all these rioters right now, and it's funny enough, it's the federal government. And now the shitty thing about the federal government is the moment an election comes through, its allegiance changes. And even if it's a guy you wanted to be voted in, all it takes is the right talking piece to say, like, well, we're due to justify an action you don't want. So, it's not the best, but it is something interesting to note is like, well, who's opposing them right now? And it's the feds. It's the great irony. But in regards to those groups, I'm not going to discount their intelligence capability. They do sit there. They have people just noting license plates, and they have the advantage that a lot of them are just fucking losers, and like they will just sit there all day instead, because like the regular person just goes to their job. It's like, what am I doing today? Well, I'm going to work, or I'm off work, so I'm resting, or I'm getting things done around the house or whatever. But these people are losers. They're drug addicts. They're criminals. So they can spend all their day just being their spotter and just sitting on their phone, fucking their Obama phone, sending up signal messages.
It was kind of weird to hear about salute reports on the news.
I'm not super. Even with that though, and
they were like, they're sending something called salute reports, and I was just like,
Fox News called it advanced intelligence.
Yeah, it's quote unquote advanced. But like, the thing is their center of gravity. You have to kind of understand them a bit to figure out how to defeat them. This is my opinion on it. Like, it's the whole, like, to beat the bug, we must understand the bug. So their center of gravity for a lot of them is perception. They're very self-perception based. Oh damn, we lost Joe. He'll come back. I'll finish the rest once he's in.
He's here.
I'm here.
All right, cool. So their center of gravity is all perception based. At least the very bleeding heart liberal types. They're very performative people. That's why they're always trendy. That's why they're always, when it's like, who's the gayest person in the world? No one's gayer than me. It's like, all right, dude. Like,
clip that.
So if you can subvert that angle, you can rot the machine from within. Why do I say this? Because that's what they covet. They covet being the most like virtuous. It's literally the whole virtue signal thing. Well, they covet being the most virtuous in their eyes. It's not virtuous at all. You and I, all of us in here, know that like, oh, a lot of these people are just evil, and like, despite how banal their evilness is, it's still evil. But like, if you can, you hit them where it hurts. You hit them in. They get paid by these organizations to fucking be protesters. Everything gets set up for them. But the moment you remove their ability to gain that momentum and influence and experience, you throw them in a frenzy, and you remove their organization. So, I said it, and no one's probably going to listen to this. So I'll say it in here. I don't really like typing it out because people can just screenshot it. But, you pick a lot of these signal groups. It was someone with a little bit of know-how of how they speak and how they operate and whatever. And, some fake pictures that you stage, or even just going to a protest or photoshopping yourself, through some crafty means available to you. With AI, it becomes even easier to do without having to leave your house. But you pose, you infiltrate the organization, and you start identifying your major players, right? You start gathering intelligence.
Oh, yeah.
And you run your counterintelligence operation. So you're like, all right, cool. Who are the major players? All right, what do I know about them? And sometimes it might require you sitting for a bit and just fucking researching, having a few of your buddies in there. Some of them, you say the right things. Maybe you even set up a fake meeting. Now, this is like once you start getting to the meeting part, you really are starting to get into like the very trade crafty, like very dangerous part of it, because you're meeting face to face with these criminals. But once you identify their major personalities, all you have to do is create doubt. So in the court system, for the police and the prosecutor to win, they have to prove beyond reasonable doubt that a crime was committed, and that this person was, they committed the crime, the actus reus, and then the mens rea, the mentality behind it. So if you can prove both of those things, the odds are the judge or the jury are going to lean onto the side of saying, like, yeah, this person is guilty. They committed the crime. These are the factors here. So all you have to do is provide enough evidence, whether it's fabricated, fake, or skewed, to discredit these people. A document with some fake letterhead with a local police department, or a DHS letterhead, because there's a ton of those documents out, and just a little Photoshop saying that they're a federal informant, and now the doubt is cast onto them. All their efforts that could be spent organizing are spent on damage control, and you get them on the back foot without ever having to pull a trigger or even leave your house. You've now subverted some of the organization, and now they have to scramble to fill that. If you get enough of your people in there, and they speak the right way, theoretically, you can have some of your guys in leadership positions. And once you're in leadership positions, you now start getting all the information on all the dudes. What you do with that information is up to you. But all I'm saying is, because they're operating in a very faceless organization, you don't get, like, a lot of their shit tests are very easy to pass, or at least I'm not going to say very easy.
Oh no, they're very easy to pass.
Oh, sure. I'm not going to say it for sure, but just for argument's sake, yeah, they're easy to pass. So once you get in there and you start becoming these leaders, you can start feeding information to X, Y, and Z organization you want. You want to work with the feds, and that's up to you. You can be like, hey, look, I'm in this chat. These are X, Y, and Z people. You have the means to identify them, but we have names and numbers. You can run this through RMS. Oh, look, this is so and so and so and so. And now all of a sudden, you have HSI doing a no-knock raid on them at 2 a.m, pulling them out of their bed, and they're arrested. And they're no longer a protesting body, and now they're in custody. And you start dismantling it like that. It's a very I'm not saying this is the way to do it. I'm saying this is a way to do it, and you gotta, some people are gonna say, "Oh, that's fucking brutal. I would never do that," or I would never go to those means. But like that is the way that they work, and that is their center of gravity, as I understand it. You remove that, you remove their ability to organize, the thing fizzles out.
I'm going to shit on Gio's parade a little bit.
Oh, go ahead, dude. I by all means.
And I love everything he just said. What I will point out is that 99% of you that are listening to this right now probably have no business doing any type of counterintelligence operations.
Oh, for sure.
And you should not do it, let alone is it probably feasible for you and your local volunteer organization. Now, if you're a Fed or a cop or something listening, you should be doing these things. Please do that. I hate the communists. With that being said, it is absolutely possible to still create these fake online personas and at least make it into chat rooms and not raise large awareness. I cannot tell you how much information, which can then be processed into intelligence, can be gathered from doing just that. Their SOPs, their manuals, the organizational tree and how things split up. And I think that's part of the reason why a lot of people on the right are so hard to recruit or don't take things seriously enough, is because they're not exposed to the reality. Now, I'm not the person to say that the socialist militant left right now is the worst thing in the world and that we all need to start really panicking. But I will say, from just without getting into great detail online like this, there is some wild ass stuff going on behind closed doors. And if I know about it, the feds know about it, and the feds aren't doing enough about it. So that should concern you. They are so well organized. They're running money. They're running guns. They're bureaucracying at the levels of Hezbollah in a sense. And they really are. And I mean that. They are. It's the information gap to the lay person that may align themselves.
Well, did you see one of those signal chats in Minneapolis got blown open, and like a few of the people in there were like Tim Waltz's like staffers.
Literally.
Oh, yeah. Well, one of them was on the city council.
Yeah. So it's like
and that is like the bottom of the barrel. That is a very child's play level of.
And I understand it's the bottom of the barrel, but imagine just the fact that they were identified. The backpedaling they have to do and the explaining they have to do, because now your name's out there. And so that's what I'm saying is, like, even just going into these and identifying some of these players, once you identify them and you bring it to light, they have to some way, shape, or form address that.
Hopefully. So we've addressed that the government's run by a giant ring of satanic child-eating pedophiles.
Oh, yeah,
There's that.
Yeah, we know that, but it's it's a way to do it, and it doesn't require, it does require someone with some degree of caution and understanding,
Definitely caution.
understanding the risk. It's not baby's first counterintelligence, but
No.
it's
And some of those groups are, if you're not careful and you're not being managed well by an intelligence shop with a kind of direction and operational parameters and whatnot. Like if you're not running this like a proper op with proper guidance, you can get made and you might get your life ruined, because some of these Antifa operatives and these socialist operatives, they are the people that have gone to Ukraine. They're the people that have gone to the Middle East. They're the guys that are in bed with the cartel, and they understand this type of shit, and they'll dock stuff the hell out of you and ruin your life. So you do have to be careful.
Oh yeah, it's a very, very, very delicate position. Nevertheless, I've put the tactic out there, and I'm sure that there's people.
No, I love the tactic.
There's at least someone out there smarter than me, listening to this and more well versed, that could be like, you know what, like maybe I could do that, and then maybe it'll change something.
Yeah,
Who knows? But it's something. I know. I don't know how much of this I'm going to speak, but there have been personalities in the gun sphere that have been completely discredited, and their whatever little influence in the group they have been discredited by just the right words photoshopped onto a message that they might have sent. And then if the message chat log was deleted or otherwise inaccessible, or even if it's not, if you have enough people to rile it up within the group, and you question the purity of their cause, or you question the fact that they are not who they say they are, you can discredit that specific individual and just burn them. And I mean, it's photoshopping. What do they? It takes some creativity. Like, well, what do they covet? What is a no go for them in their in their little organization? So the same fears they have are the same fears the militia movement has had since the 80s. It's like federal infiltration. Well, okay, is this person working with the feds? Are they a collaborator? Are they an informant? And it also can.
I guess that's what's kind of nice about, like, on a smaller scale, like associating with, I'm going to say Christians, but this might lead into a bit different, like, tack to the conversation. It is kind of nice because it is kind of hard to fake it, where, yeah.
Oh no, it's
like,
super easy.
You just gotta tell the 90s.
No. You don't get what I'm saying. You don't get what I'm saying. Like, there's plenty. I mean, look, of course, like, I am a hypocrite, but I'm saying there is like a certain, like, you say, I've seen guys pretending to be like Christians for, I guess, for some kind of like social gain. I'm not sure why.
Financial gain.
It's very trendy now to do.
And it's, in my opinion, it's easier to see, like, it's easier to tell a guy who's trying to be a good Christian versus someone who is like trying to be a Christian, if you get what I'm saying. And
I could agree with
I
that.
guess what I mean is, like, if you observe someone's lifestyle for long enough, it's kind of hard to like hide the fact that you're like not a degenerate, like, communist. You know what I mean?
Was this a segue? Was this like a break off point from like the federal informants?
No, it's just like, it's
okay.
kind of both. It's kind of both. I mean, you could take it any way you want to. It's just like, I was just thinking, like I said, it's like we've had our own worries about federal informants inside of, I don't know why they thought that the traditional Catholic groups were worthy of being spied on, but even those guys, like, I'm sure it's like anyone who's going to be like deceiving somebody in that way, like in specifically in like a Christian context. I mean, are they, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of easy to observe if they don't speak the same language you do, even if they say like the same words. Do you get what I mean by that? I know it sounds kind of like nonsense, but I'm trying to articulate something that I've seen in reality.
I kind of understand where you're coming from. I
more because you say like, because we say like we're thinking about the other, but I'm also thinking about like our own people. You know what I mean?
Oh no. Okay, so for sure on that point, no, I understand what you're coming from.
Yeah.
And that kind of brought up one of the other things that I don't even know if we want to get into it yet, but I brought up on potential talking points was, the idea that if your organization, and I'm talking about things bigger than mutual assistance groups, I do not concern myself with mutual assistance groups. I'm thinking organizations, bigger picture, movement, future, the whole thing. People have this perception that Christian-only groups are the answer to whatever it is, this positive outcome you think is going to come down the future. However, as we both know and we've just talked about, the Christian community, while faulted, and we're all faulted, we all fall short of grace or of worthiness, is this idea that Christians are the answer to everything. And in reality, there's so many people that are going to fall short of leadership, of trustworthiness, of honor, and all of this kind of stuff. But they wear the badge of Christian. The amount of people I see on Instagram, and I'm really firm by this. I am a huge what we call pattern recognizer, but I don't tolerate like the actual racist shit. Like the amount of Christians I see sharing like meaningful Nazi stuff on Instagram while touting to be a loving Christian is mind blowing to me. Like how can your perception of justice, mercy, and freedom be so narrow? Now, is some of that shit funny? It absolutely is. Like memes are funny and they're not going away. But there is a problem in the community right now where people are like starting to misconstrue what it was that America was envisioned to be and what the initial goal was, which was successful for a very long time. With kind of going backwards, or they're obsessed with dividing the community. I can't tell you the amount of people that I've talked to that either lead organizations or want to lead organizations, or they want to be an influencer, or whatever it is, where they say, my group only allows Christians. Okay, what kind of Christian? Catholic, Baptist, Orthodox? Is there a standard to that? How do you determine who's a good Christian, a bad Christian? We're surrounded in society by pagans and Muslims and Jews and Christians and atheists and spiritual people who don't align with anything. And sometimes you can culture circle those people into good and bad. You absolutely can. I will not deny that. But to look at all of the Americans that live around you that might be atheist or Norse pagan or something like that and be like, hey, you can't be involved in my freedom movement or whatever because you don't believe in my version of religion. So the other 99% of things that we all agree with and that we want to move forward better with in the community and for our country, it doesn't matter because Christian this, Christian that. Or I've talked to another organization in the past that said they'll allow non-Christians into the group, but non-Christians aren't allowed to have firearms. Only Christians can carry firearms. I'm like, you guys are out of your minds. Out of your minds.
Yeah, well, I guess I can't agree because I wasn't technically Christian, I suppose, at some point when I was being a bad boy. So
I think that most like Christian men have got away from it and sort of reverted or come to it at some point. But I think that the biggest thing with that is that when we start talking about what is the purpose of a group, right? What is the purpose of whatever you want to call it, right? Mutual assistance group, whatever. I don't know what other names there are out there for different like subsects of guys who want to get together in case something terrible happens to our society or whatever, and you need to rely on one another versus the government per se. So with that, right, if we're going to go on like, and this is a whole nother discussion of at what point do we, or how likely do we think that it is that there would be a point where there really is no rule of law and whatnot. I personally don't think that it's very likely because I think that
it's probably not very likely. And if it happens, it's very localized, which means you still can't go like, I mean, like if you don't want any repercussion, you still couldn't go like full ham, like, oh yeah, our little village is under attack by the deep state communists coming out of the ground. You probably could murder them all in cold
I'm
blood.
starting to see
Oh,
red.
yeah, nothing's gonna happen to me. I can just go, I'm gonna do this for a month, and then when it's over, I'm just gonna go back to work. Like, dog, that ain't happening. You're going to jail, big dog.
Maybe.
No, I mean,
I don't.
well,
I
you
don't
know,
know.
you think about it too, and the entire world relies so heavily on the U.S. that I feel like before anybody is like, we are the only, law enforcement in our small town, like all of NATO would have to come in to try to intervene and like make sure that the U.S. doesn't fully collapse because of how heavily everybody else in the world relies on the U.S. But regardless of that, right? Even just surrounding yourself with people that make you better and whatnot. I would say that the problem with the tolerance or inclusivity of anyone is that on one hand, yes, right, there are people out there who are pagan or non-practicing, non-religious at all, or whatever, that are guys that you and I can sit down with and get along with very well and see eye to eye with on most things, and maybe some of the nuanced spiritual pieces we don't agree on, but in general, like we have a lot of the same moral standing and whatnot. But I think that the problem with it is that we are basing our moral guidance on the state that we're currently living in, which is that the law that surrounds us and that keeps us in line is based off of Christian morality at the end of the day. And so when you have people that do not necessarily subscribe to that Christian morality on a spiritual level, you get to a point where you have to start to question if that law that is based on Christian morality is not there anymore. How likely are these people to start bending the rules and whatnot? And I think that when you start really diving into the spiritual aspect of things, and like we had mentioned before, right? There's plenty of people who are Christian that are terrible people, right? All of us have downfalls at some point. All of us have things that we don't that we shouldn't do that we do, and there's plenty of people even in my group that I've had that are Christian, or I'm Catholic. There's people that I've had that are Catholic that I've had to kick out because they're just not up to par, or that they don't. I don't like the way that they conduct themselves, right? But I think that it's a good initial litmus test to say that I only want people that I know on the deep spiritual moral basis are going to be aligned with me on 90% of things, right? You can always get in the discussion of the other 10% between Protestants and Catholics and whatnot, have different views on certain aspects of morality and things like that, right? But at the end of the day, 90% of the things that we're going to agree on or 90% of the things that exist are things that we're going to agree on. So I think that it is a good litmus test to get through. And I think that to counter that, right? What about the guy who isn't practicing? He's not a Christian, whatever, but he has the same morality as you and whatnot. I think that on one hand, it's also always going to be a case-by-case basis. Like, you should give them the time of day and talk to them, because you might talk to them and they're like super solid on all counts. They hold to a strict moral standard. They are unwavering in their moral guidance. They have the same morality that Western society was based upon, the Christian morality. They're strong in it. They're better than you are in many aspects, and they're not practicing because they have some deep-seated reasoning or dilemmas or whatever to keep them from subscribing to the aspect of religion in general or Christianity. Like, yes, okay, maybe this guy is a good guy to bring around because I know that he's a good character and I know all this stuff. And, maybe being around us and, being able to get into this open discussion, we might be able to help him with some of his dilemmas or speed bumps in his own journey, right? Like, we're all used as intercessors for God in some degree to help one another is the total Christian community. Um, and also you get plenty of guys that are just like, hey, I was raised non-religious. It's something that I think that I would like to get into, right? Like I have a lot of these similar viewpoints and stuff, and it really is speaking to me. And I'm in this process right now of kind of figuring out the faith, but I would like to join. It's like, yeah, okay, there's no problem with that. But I think that people that are hardline, like, very opposite of you and have like intrinsically based on their religious background have very different moral standings are ultimately going to become incompatible when the time is going to matter for them to be compatible the most.
I think there's the possibility for that. And I think, again, it depends on what type of group we are running this litmus test for. Again, I'm thinking organization. I'm thinking much bigger, much more influential, higher.
Yeah, Jeremy,
higher
why don't you flesh out that a bit before we go
Yeah,
back
'cause
into that?
I guess I need to understand it from your perspective of like,
when I say organization and everything I've referenced in this, I mean a public entity that's probably starting volunteer in nature that is looking to establish influence, responsibility, big emphasis on responsibility and involvement in the community. I'm not talking about a mag. I'm not talking about, hey, 5 or 6 buddies in my area, let's hang out when we can't rely on the government anymore. I'm talking about organizations that are coming together in the pursuit of a higher purpose, a higher meaning, a hope for the future if things degrade further, as there has been throughout all of history. There has to be a starting place for those organizations. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the smaller groups. I'm thinking bigger picture. And maybe I'm a dreamer, but that is what I'm talking about.
And I don't want to. If you guys think this is derailing what we're going into, then please feel free to change the course. But like that leads me to believe, like, what exactly is the thing that we're hoping to maintain? Like at some point, like when, like the rule, whatever. Like when society changes enough that people have to step up and kind of correct the course. Like what are the parts of the old society that you're going to bring back, and what are the parts that you're going to try not to bring back, I suppose. And then when you have this whole group of willing people who at some point, like, I guess, believe in continuing, and then when you get to that point, it's like, hey, well, now we have to make the laws again, or we have to figure out what it is that we are. I wonder what that will be, because in the past, like the formation of this country, the formation of the rest of the continents in our hemisphere, were Christian, mostly, and then before they were indigenous tribes, obviously. But I am curious to see now, and this is a question, not really a question, but this is posing a thought of what is the thing now that we're kind of like this fragmented country of people who believe different things, but we do have a sense of, like, I guess there is the underlying sense of right and wrong. I won't put a name on it right now, but
It depends.
the men can get together. There are men who can get together who can say we need to not to do what we're doing right now. When that time comes and things change, what do you retain? What do you leave behind, I guess?
That depends on who wins, man.
But yeah, it definitely depends on who wins. But I
The
think it
good guys.
also, if the good guys win in the end, this is going to be really dependent on who was the leaders in which all of the masses, whatever the masses is, whether the masses is a few thousand or the masses is millions, whatever it might be, state, local, regional balkanization, local, city, township, county, whatever it is, what was the underlying foundation and the lifestyle, even so that the person who you placed your trust into reflected to you? What did they say? This is what I envision for the future, and this is why I want you to be a part of it. And this is why I want to try to do this for the future. And a lot of times it probably does fall back into that sense of somewhat Christian values that this country was founded on. And most of what we would consider the modern world, currently exists upon. I think that's absolutely something we continue to move forward. The other big thing with that is, and this is just going back to the religious aspect before that, and kind of the litmus test that was brought up is, we as Christians are charged by the church to spread Christianity. We are tasked to bring others to Christ who may be lost. Churches are hospitals for the sick.
Absolutely.
And we can't do that. We cannot spread the word of Christ. And everybody has to receive Christ in different ways and feel it in their soul, that Holy Spirit that resides in all of us, and we perceive it in different ways. People are going to take that differently. And if you're a person that says, hey, I've got an idea for the future, but we're only doing it for Christians, and we're going to put up these barriers otherwise, that's not going to bring more people to Christ. It's going to turn people off to Christ. And we're going to have a whole different problem if we continue to move away from a Christ-centered or a Christian value-centered society, even if that involves some non-Christians down the line within reason. I'm going to remain PG for the sake of being online. I don't want my deep thoughts put into, the forever internet.
So, I mean, look at how other religions have done it. I mean, it's not, sometimes it's not pretty, sometimes it's very accepting, and what are the pros and cons of each? This is like this starts going into like the large scale pragmatic part of things. Like if you look at Islam, for example, like when they coexist with the other religions, they force them to pay a tax. Like they're not equal citizens. Is that a good system? I don't believe so at all. I'm not Muslim for good reasons, but what I am saying is that's how they tackled that issue, and that's certainly a difficult thing. And you're always going to have, when you start having more groups, there's always going to be in-group preference, and that works both ways, like so. As
the freedom, we'll call it the freedom movement per se, the freedom-minded individuals, and that is very different if we asked every conservative to fill out, a personality test on what that actually means. And that's why you have to find common ground. But we as the freedom movement have to keep somewhat of that in mind as to our values when we move forward, that we're supposed to be just and merciful.
I agree with, like, there's a line where, like, everyone to the left of this line, they don't necessarily have to be Christian, but they can be good bedfellows and be virtuous enough. And they might not believe in Christ, but they embody those beliefs. But there's also, like, it's also always going to be, especially post upheaval, right? Because I'm not going to call it conflict, because it might not be a violent conflict. It might, for all you know, it's a very social thing, and things just change because people want it to be that way. And
what's the conflict about?
Well, who knows?
I just want to ask a couple of questions. Like, I want to kind of think about this a little bit, just for my own head. Like, say there's this coming conflict, right? Mm-hmm. What's it about? I don't really know, but perhaps it's the militant left and they want to realize the communist utopia and they do the revolution. I don't know if that's a stupid take or not, but it's one
pretty
that
realistic throughout the 20th and 21st century.
Exactly. So other than, if you're not informed by history, like, why is that bad? You know what I mean? Like, why, if you're not informed by I would say specifically Christianity, and also just being a student of history, or common sense, but like, why would that be bad to, like, someone say, like, why would communism or the communist revolution be bad to someone who's American, whatever, but maybe they don't really know anything about anything, and they're just like, because this is how it's going to, the useful idiots, right, that are going to go along with it. This is how it's going to happen. So
I think that's a phenomenal point, Joe.
Yeah.
I actually had a conversation with the fireman at the firehouse, literally my last shift, about this exact thing. He is a middle of the line person. He's a jolly old fellow. I love this guy to death. He does not have a lot of strong opinions. He's not a religious minded individual. He is what I would call like a true soft, moderate American. Not really overly informed, kind of sees what's on the news, has some personal opinions, good and bad.
A bread and circus American.
A bread and circus American. He's very much a bread and circus American, because he kept making the jokes about having access to his wine and cheese because he's a big European traveling guy. And we kind of had this,
like somebody I would hate.
I know.
I love him. I won't say his name. As much as we have our differences, he's a jolly fellow.
I do love wine and cheese. All right, continue.
But we came to this exact point in the conversation where he's like, and we were talking about ICE and immigration and the upsides, the downsides, the power of government. And he was at least consistent about not wanting right or left leaning government to have what he would consider overreaching power. But in his mind, he did not realize in this support of anti-current establishment movement that's going on in this country, and he's very adamant to be like, maybe they're doing something right. He did not realize the levels at which the far left actors were actually at. He had no idea that there were roadblocks in Minneapolis and that people were checking ideas. He had no idea that they were carrying guns. Like, he had no idea there was this entire militant, violent, unhinged side to what he might have just considered before, like the good resistance, the healthy resistance to this, Trump administration and this right power that just isn't. It's just not for me. And I think these guys are doing the good fight. And then I explained a lot of stuff to him. He's like, "Ooh, no, a lot of that sounds really bad too." And that's exactly what Joe just said. Is like, most Americans, if they're just gonna be like, "Why would this be bad? I don't know any better. It seems pretty good."
Yeah, I mean,
Right, there's like a popular revolution going on.
Yeah, if you're a Christian, you would understand, doing a little research on communism, that it's an atheistic system, right? It is your God, right? That's how.
There's a lot of socialists that claim to be Christian. I'm not saying they're.
Oh, no. I'm just saying,
right
like,
path.
If you're adjacent to that being a socialist or whatever, you have to kind of reconcile to. I mean, you can make the argument.
Well, I think it's
too. I'm just saying, like it's an atheistic system that deifies man over anything. Like Stalin was deified. Lenin.
Did you say capitalism?
Well, I mean, I'm saying capitalism. Like, if the average person, if you ask them, like, what are the systems? Well, they'll say like communism,
right.
capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They might spring some surprise and be like, oh, dictatorship. All right, well, what kind of dictatorship?
Right.
Well, I think that's even more.
You can have a Christian theocratic.
I guess the reason I brought it up, the reason I wanted to kind of go down this path was because you have your countries in ruins, and you have this revolution, that's this revolutionary peace, and then you have like the good old Americans that just wanted to be left alone, per se. You got some of them want to make the country in their image, that they see fit, and this and that and the other thing. And then you have a vast swaths of bread and circus Americans who are like undecided, and basically whatever happens during the conflict is going to dictate like what side they're on. If a school bus gets blown up full of children, well, you can imagine whose side they're not going to be rooting for after that. You know what I mean? So I guess like when I say, oh, we're talking about the Christian thing, it's just that, like, it's easy for me to, I guess it's just the way it is now for me. I don't think it's a bad thing, but it's just like, that's the society I want to live in. But I don't know what possible value what is a value that I would want to preserve other than, like,
understand.
So you know what I mean? Like, what?
You have to understand too, the American system is like very novel. It's unique. It's not. It hasn't.
Like,
really
what is to be restored? I guess. Like, what is the? How do you explain this to like the layman American who's like, hey, like, this is what we're doing. That side is a communist revolution. What's the other side saying? Like,
so I think if you're an individual that asks that question, not to say that you are, because I know you're posing a question, but I'm saying if you're an individual that asks that question, like, what system are we preserving? What am I fighting for? What are the values? Like, like, what is the big deal? I think if you are asking that question, and I don't mean this to be arrogant or disrespectful of anybody, you're not the person that's supposed to be in leadership positions. People who should be in leadership positions coming forward should have those ideas, and that's how they gain followings, respect, support, all that kind of stuff. And they go, that guy, I mean, it's just like what we do now that we've done throughout all of history. Somebody shows up and go, guys, I got all these ideas. You guys want to do it? And they're like, that sounds awesome.
Well, to be fair, though, hold on real quick. To be fair, though, how do you get to those ideas in the first place?
That's what I'm at. Well, that's the question I'm asking, is when the layman, the guy who's not in the leadership position or whatever, he's like, well, okay, I'm not going to be with these like like violent revolutionaries, I'm going to be on the other side. Like, so what's the thing? Like, what are I am genuinely saying, like, what is to be retained from from this point on? Say we live in like a secular kind of post. I don't know if we're post-Christian. There's a lot of good Christians in America, I think. I don't know. Can you still call it a Christian country? I'm not sure.
Kind of. The bones
The
of the
framework
system.
was Christian.
But anyway, so how do you what?
That's the next podcast episode.
That's what I'm trying to say is like, I'm trying to basically think through this logically without using my biases towards wanting to just live in like a Catholic utopia where everybody's happy.
The problem is that there's a bajillion different ways that's going to be influenced. It's going to be influenced on how you came up in the community, the culture you're raised, religious or non-religious.
Like, what are we going to say? Like, hey, bro, listen. Once the communist utopia isn't realized, we're not doing the polycule thing. It's like, what? But why? Well,
Counterpoint.
How do I explain that? Yeah.
Counterpoint. To what degree you need to court? To what degree do you need to court those people versus just satisfy them?
See, and that's why those are the real questions, right?
If you want the pragmatic Geo, I'd say you only need to court them enough to where they're back to bread and circus, right? If they are bread and circus,
interesting.
American, you just need to ensure they don't really give a shit what is going on. And odds are,
but if the circus is if the circus is high speed internet pornography, I don't want that. You know what I mean? So like, how can you say
you can offer an alternative that isn't high speed internet pornography? But as to what that is, that's very difficult to say.
Yeah,
that's how do I fix this giant problem? Like in one sentence, like it's very difficult.
But the other thing about that too is the question is kind of posed as to maybe how do I find these people in a sense, and the answer should be how do I guide these people towards the right direction? How do I take people who don't realize that my option is better than communist revolution? How do I guide them?
What made the average lay Roman want to stay within the Roman Empire?
Yeah. And that's the thing is everything we've discussed tonight has happened a gajabillion times, and that's a number.
True.
Write it down. A gajabillion times throughout history.
Billion times.
And there's been people who have sat there and gone like, well, what are we doing? Is this ever going to happen? It's not going to happen. Why would Rome fall? Rome can't fall. What do you mean? Like we have ale and the Colosseum. Like we can't do that. And now we're all in America going, America can't fall. We've got NFL and IPA beers. Like, this is fine. Like, nothing's ever going to happen. And a lot of times, nothing does ever happen. But guess what? At some point throughout history, something's going to happen. And good men are going to have to pick up the pieces because we are not special by any means. And until Christ shows back up in the sky and says, all right, we're good here.
It's very
do you guys think
look at history? What were the first Christian governments and
official widespread governments, or like
could you live in a monarchy? Like, you know what I mean? Like that's a question. That's like a soul-seeking question. Would it be?
Ultimately, it would have to be.
Would it be worth instating a system like that? Would you go back to representative democracy or like a republic like that?
I would go back. My personal answer, I'd go back to representative democracy with a lot more red tape written into the Constitution as to the powers of limitation. And anybody that decides we're going to stray from it probably needs to be corrected a lot earlier on instead of getting to the point where we're giving away 40% of our paycheck to pedophiles.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, I'm just – it's a great question, right?
Sure, it's a great question.
It's also like – I mean, if you want to bring it back to Rome, I mean, Rome wasn't always the same government either. Like, yeah, sure, you had the Senate, but then sometimes the Senate was neutered, and you just had Caesar, and those are like what were considered like some of the best years of the Roman Empire. So like, how do you like? That's a difficult part to reconcile. Is like, do we just put all our guidance into one man?
Well, it was a republic. It was a republic for 500 years or so, and then it was a empire for another 5.
It went through a lot of phases. And
it went through
definitely depends on what era.
So maybe maybe the beast, the beast change. I don't want to say like you'll know it when you're there, but like the beast changes quite a bit as
as time goes on, it changes to fit the needs of, I don't want to say progress, but just like success
I
almost.
feel like I heard Jeremy have a thought.
I did.
I heard the thought through the
Go,
microphone.
go.
We have to be, and I think this is something I wanted to talk about. And since we're here now, this is a great kind of side point to make.
Sure.
We want change. We want a return to what we may see as a higher sense of morality and honor and fairness of the system, whatever it might be. And this kind of leads into the immigration stuff as well, and what the current administration is doing and all that. It can be. We have to become a lot more comfortable with shit getting really ugly, really nasty, and sometimes what we may perceive as immoral, depending on who you're asking, in the terms of violence, before we can get to something better. I think there's this perception that war is pretty, and that it's just going to be fought amongst honorable men against unhonorable men, and the sides are clear, and it's a movie, and at the end we kill the dragon and we live happily ever after. But like we see it now in the brother wars with Ukraine and Russia, and just everywhere else. I mean, war is fucking nasty, and the politics is nasty, and it's going to be even nastier if anything ever happens here. And I really hope it doesn't. Like I don't want to fight through a balkanized war, a civil war, a local conflict, or anything like that. Like I like drinking cold beer and riding my horse on the weekend and gardening. Like that's what I like. But people are really being wimps about change. And I'm going to use the current immigration stuff as an example. There is a lot of people, and again, what we call the freedom community, that are upset that Border Patrol or ICE maybe beat up some communists as the communists try to block roads or let pedophiles or cartel members run free. And they're like, oh, look at the abuse of federal power here. It's like those people want to kill you, and you're mad that they got like maced maybe sooner than they should have, based on
what they say.
whatever
You know what they say. Everyone wants a sausage. No one wants to see how it's made.
Absolutely. I mean, that's how it is, and we're seeing that real time with like the immigration stuff right now, where it's like, hey, we all voted to remove all of these people from our country in hopes of making it better. Now we're upset when it comes time to actually doing it, because when we said, hey, will you please exit the building, and they said no, that we had to actually do something about it. And it's like, so how willing are you to really fight for what you believe is the higher purpose or the end goal?
Well, it brings me back. It brings me back to the to what degree do you need to court these people?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Because I'll say this, if they're all talk and no walk, that doesn't matter. That they're unhappy on how you're making the sausage. If at the end you give them the sausage and the sausage is tasty, like it's kind of a weird. I'm probably putting it in a weird way, but like
sausage is an interesting food choice, but
well, I mean the saying
is that the saying?
That the saying is, everyone wants a sausage, no one wants to see how it's made, or a hot dog, no one wants to see how it's made.
Oh, like referring to how the animal's killed and processed and all that.
Yeah, right.
Well, no, like hot
grilling
sausages are like notoriously made out of random parts, and people wouldn't want to eat them.
They're
if
ground
they
into a paste. And
yeah.
then
But I get what you're saying. Like, like when the never mind. So when you're grinding them into a paste, no, but
paste, and then you put them in the intestine of one of the animals.
So when they won't leave the building, and you grind them into a paste. So yeah, but I get what you're saying. Like, and I thought this too. Like when some of the immigration stuff was coming out, like Trump was just nothing. When Trump was just, I'll make this. I mean, this is just something I noticed. When Trump was talking about the immigration stuff, and I'm like, dude, that will be sick if that was even possible. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, there's no way, because it will be ugly. It will be on people's streets. There will be dudes snatching people up in the street. Like, there's no way that the Americans would let it happen. Mm-hmm. They just don't have this. I thought they wouldn't have the stomach for it. Like, they'd freak out. But apparently, that's half true. But it really is half true.
People, right? Historically, like, I'm sure they said the same shit in Rome. I'm sure they said the same shit in the Soviet Union, and or Nazi Germany, or whatever. Pick your government. So,
absolutely.
It's not, it's not like this is a novel.
Did they have criminal aliens though?
They had barbarians. What happened to them?
They killed them.
They killed them.
They
Yeah.
fucking put them on spikes, dude, and displayed them, or they made them into slaves. Like,
Yeah, they
I'm not
killed
saying
them.
that's the answer, but I'm saying like that.
Sure.
That's the level that it looks like.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like throughout history, thank goodness we have this Christian morality, because otherwise, I don't know why you wouldn't just kill everybody that you're enemies with. But yeah, like why is that not better? Like, can't we scoop everybody up, bring them back to where they came from, and everyone should be happy? Because the alternative in human history is like killing everyone.
Hence why we're in the issue that we are, because there's an entire culture, demographic, generational, and really multi-generational problem where there are people that think the statement you just said, hey, scoop up all of these illegal immigrants, send them back, and hope that our country's better in the end. They think that you are like a Hitler reborn Nazi simply for you wanting to, embrace common immigration policy, practice that's true throughout the entire planet. And these people, and it's not like just like haha memes.
Like
they
every
are
country has like,
burned in their brain that you are now a Nazi. Like that's a wild mental phenomenon that I
I
don't
know
think
it means that they can kill me too, which sucks.
so you can kill you. And sometimes they do.
Right.
So, I mean, regardless of what your thoughts of Charlie Kirk are and whatever the hell's going on with his wife now and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
somebody, but whether there's powers to be behind it or not, somebody convinced somebody to kill Charlie Kirk simply because of something was going on. And somebody convinced a guy to climb up on the roof in Texas and shoot up a border patrol station. Somebody convinced all of those people out in the desert in summer of last year, about 12 Antifa members, that it was a good idea to take a couple of ARs and fireworks out to the desert and start shooting them off at a border patrol station. And the list goes on and on and on. But to the lay person, it's like, yeah, why does any of this make sense? Like, what is going on? Hence lays the problem. Hence lays why this ends in one of two ways. Either one side gets on board with the other side and they forget their ways, or somebody's got to fight it out. Somebody's got to win. And it may not be the good guys. It could be the bad guys.
Is it inevitable?
It is inevitable. It's absolutely inevitable.
That is history.
It seems that way.
I mean, it just is. I mean, it's kind of like if you look at World War II and Germany's rapid expansion, after the Nazis took power and they invaded, all of their neighbors, Austria, Poland, all the way down. Italy's doing it. They're getting the boys back together. Eventually they invade France. So a lot of people, people sitting in America, they're like, some people were like, it's inevitable. Like, we're going to be in World War II. And there's just a ton of people that were like, you're crazy. Like, that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They said World War II is inevitable shortly after the Treaty of Versailles and World War I.
It absolutely is. But we could record a podcast for 2 hours on why that's true.
Oh yeah.
But that's true. I mean, it's.
But I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
After the Garden of Eden, after the Garden of Eden, guess what? The Old Testament is full of nothing but war between a bunch of different factions of people throughout the Middle East, with a religious context to it, of course.
Oh,
me when I'm at war.
Who is speaking? So like, okay, so now we've come to the point where we're like, all right, unfortunately, it is inevitable. It is coming. That's why we're, to be fair, in this sphere in the first place, right? Because we all have that kind of sentiment, more or less. Who is that guy, Gio? I'm not sure if you were on his podcast or Jeremy, but you had just mentioned him earlier. He does these cool reports and he sells, like, you can have access to his online store and he gives you the report every day. He's got like these really good yes no Mike Shelby. So he's I was listening to him for a while. He's a very smart guy. I learned a lot of stuff. So what I wanted to ask you is so I didn't think that this was possible when he was talking about this. I was like, how could this be? Like the state fighting the federal government. I'm like, on what circumstance would they even need to do that? Even if California doesn't agree with something or Texas doesn't agree with something, they just bitch and it blows over. But now, you have people like Tim Waltz, say what you want. Bro spent a lot of time in China, but regardless, his state is or was at the time, a few weeks ago, or is now basically fighting back on the federal government, where you're posing your state's police force and your state's military against the federal government's police and federal government's stuff like that. And I'm like, oh my God, like this could kind of pop off if you make it happen. Like it is possible for the state and the Fed to fight still, like in modern society.
Well, and there,
It's theoretically sent in, and a fight happens, and then more military
Right.
action, mission creep happens. It's totally possible.
I just like I said, I heard Mike Shelby talk about it first. I was like, how is that likely? And then
the same
seeing
thing
this, I'm like,
happened.
wow.
The same thing happened during the Biden administration with the red states, and it was led by Texas and Governor Abbott, because the Biden administration was not down with the red states putting a lockdown on their border without federal permission, without federal resources. And Governor Abbott mobilized a ton of the Texas National Guard. There was a coalition of like 13 other states that sent National Guardsmen down there, and they took over federal areas of the border and built facilities and built new fences and did all this stuff. And there was, I mean, it wasn't big news unless you're really paying attention, but there was a contentious time where the Biden administration, and thankfully he was just a, spineless coward of it all, but they were basically like, what if we have to federalize the National Guard or send in, national troops to like take back this federal territory from the state guard? And then luckily after about 6 months, the feds gave up because Governor Abbott was like, I'm doing what I want. I'm just going to keep doing this. So y'all can piss off or come figure it out. So, but I mean, it's starting to become more and more of a question. And that's why it's important. Again, it goes back to that soft power. What do the local officers in your state's National Guard have to say about all of this? What is the political mindset of the generals in the National Guard and those that are in the cabinet of your state governor or whatever it might be? What happens when your state starts to normalize the militancy of organizations that you don't like? We could say for the whole.
It's why a lot of states. I know Florida has like their own state guard. Yeah. That's beholden only to Florida, and has done expeditionary disaster response, like for Hurricane Helene when it hit the southeast, and it's just kind of like you might just see more of that, and a lot of those organizations, their vetting's probably a lot different. And if you get your group of friends in there, you might be able to influence it because it's a much smaller group. Can your group of friends change the United States Army? Probably not. Can your group of friends, if they got into the Florida State Guard, as an example, have a much bigger influence because of the smaller numbers? Perhaps.
If you're ever curious more about that exact thing you're talking about, we'll talk about it offline.
All right.
Yeah. But
parking enforcement, MRAPs.
Parking enforcement, MRAPs.
Yeah.
Community support, MRAPs.
A concert streamed solely through LRADs.
But it's just Catholic mass music.
So I guess it was like, and another thing was like kind of talking about like the inevitability of like the coming, crisis or whatever. Like before, it was scary, right? Like I was very scared, and years ago, right? Then like, dude, this is terrifying, and I panic bought a 357 repeater. It's like the only gun I could get my hands on at the time. And anyway, so now it's kind of like we've been in the scene for a while. People and things like this, and make communities and stuff. I'm less fearful of it, but I've never been so sure that I've never been more sure that it was actually gonna happen than I am now. But I'm like less scared than I ever was, not because I'm like confident in myself or something or other people. I just think that like the desensitizing of like, I guess a lot of it has to do with Charlie Kirk maybe, but like and the constant civil unrest, but like it was like it's not shocking really that much anymore. I guess Charlie Kirk really was like kind of the last bit, but like even the stuff with the Epstein drops, and I'm just like
that's
of course
that's the slow burn that has taken pretty much all forms of civil war and or revolution throughout most of history. I won't say color revolution because color revolution kind of gets weird with government influence and all that kind of stuff. But like if you look at the American Revolution, we are looking at a solid 30 years of tension building and minor organization building before we ever got to the revolution. It starts with the Sons of Liberty in Boston, and literally a bunch of dudes meeting underneath, bars and doing smuggling stuff and all of this to try and counteract what they thought was wrongful from the British, which eventually led to them building the militia outside in the countryside of Massachusetts, which eventually led to the First Continental Congress, which eventually led to Lexington Concord, and so on and so forth. The rest is history till we got to the point that we were America. But it took 20 to 30 years of slow burn, nothing ever happens, kind of, to something's happening to it happened.
In the Civil War, I've heard people say that too. Like there was like the first couple battles of the Civil War, like the rest of the country didn't really think there was a civil war going on.
Well, you had the
like you wouldn't say like now it's the Civil War. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just there was
you
just
had the
fighting.
entire expansion westward, prior to the Civil War, and then you had incidents like Bleeding Kansas and all this kind of stuff on the border states where essentially militias and mobs are fighting each other, but it's not organized yet. And then you eventually get to Harper's Ferry and whatnot, and then you get to Fort Sumter, and then you get into the formal, Confederacy and their removal of themselves, declaring essentially independence from the Union, which then eventually led to the first battle, and then the rest is history. But again, that's a perfect example of something that took 20 to 30 years to slow burn. That's very recent in our own history, and the history of America is extremely small compared to the majority of the world. And that's two examples in less than 100 years apart of each other.
Right.
And now here we are in the United States. You would say that, the industrial age, which eventually led into the information age, kind of kept us at bay from our major differences. And you could say that for the most part, we really didn't have a lot of major differences throughout the 1900s until really towards the end. We were a very multi-mixing pot country, mainly Christian, but again, we had those Christian foundation blocks that built up the country. And as things moved forward, your people like our parents probably make jokes about it. The Republicans and the Democrats of everything basically prior to the 90s or the end of the Cold War were extremely close to each other on the political spectrum. And the social and what it was considered culturally norm was very well accepted across the board. That's the big divide we have now, is that now we have completely different cultural norms. And when you develop that, just like if we put a bunch of Christians and a bunch of Muslims in a different part of the world together, they don't mix together because everything looks different to each other. The same thing applies now here in America, except our social and political dynamics are just so different that we're just bound to mash heads together until this eventually comes to a boiling point. I think a big push on President Trump's external force projection right now is a direct representation of the internal weakness that there is right now, because he does not have great support from the right because he's backpedaled on about every campaign promise he has. The other half of the country already didn't like him to begin with. Nobody trusts the feds. The states are starting to get a little nippy. They are, for whether the presidency is Republican or Democrat. And that's true throughout all of history. We go back to the Roman Empire. They started projecting power outwards when Rome, the city, was starting to crumble. And I think we see a lot of that right now. Let's grab Maduro. Let's try to influence the Western Hemisphere and rewrite our security plan. Hey, we need Greenland. Hey, time to do regime change in Iran. We're doing all of it at once because we're
it's all easy. I said that was the masterclass in Venezuela. It was a quick, easy, fun little conflict that you just bring back tremendous political capital.
Absolutely. And I think it all ties together to the inevitable. Thanks for attending my TED Talk.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree. To what degree? I'd say the biggest difference, though, are the factors that. So in every other, let's talk about the American Revolution, right? So that was a conflict over taxation and a changing culture, because the Americans, self-realization as Americans as opposed to British subjects, and it was even that was very divided. How many of the population of the 13 colonies, how many were actually diehard revolution, pro-revolution versus apathetic to the whole thing versus Tories? In the Civil War, you had but even then with the Revolutionary War, it was taxation based. It was all of a sudden we're getting fucking raked over the coals over a war we know nothing about and have no interest in. France and England are at war, but America isn't. Why do we have to pay for it? And then you get to the Civil War, and it's the federal government is deciding that our major way of life, or our agriculturally based, indentured labor, slavery, what have you, is at risk. Our economic powerhouse is at risk. Our money's about to go.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering with this one, where the significant money angle is, because I mean, the people who are supporting this, you would think would be like major industries in the U.S. that are dependent on it, but I'm not really seeing that.
Well, and
So
I don't think it is the major influencing factor this time around, because one thing that the 20th century conflicts have
ideology,
opposed to everything that was really more of a monarch based world is things are not only limited to economic or religious factors anymore.
right?
Social aspects are a big one, and I think we're seeing that in the United States now, because think of all of the color revolutions. Both the Soviet Union, China, and America / NATO have pushed onto the world to further whatever it is, political game or economic game that we're playing, based off of whatever is happening at the time. I mean, we look at Ukraine in 2014. The whole reason we have a war in Ukraine right now is because the United States and the CIA and probably other partners in Europe pushed a color revolution after the election of really would have been 2013, which elected once again the pro-Russian candidate,
Russia, yeah.
which was a turn away from the youth that was a little bit more
Pro-West.
westernized in a sense, which then led to a long ass 8-year long civil war between Eastern and Western Ukrainians. That is a whole other freaking topic. But back to your question, you're like, hey, where's the economic angle now? You could even argue that the economic angle lies within the
They fucking killed him.
got
They
rid of them.
fucking killed him.
There it is.
That's what you're going into the emails.
I know, right? That's anyway, we have one side that believes, hey, I believe in small, limited government with a much smaller tax base, which prioritizes the limited resources we have for the betterment of everyone a lot better. And we should be self-reliant and self-caring of each other at the community basis. That kind of sums up how conservatives kind of think. More community focus, less big government, smaller taxes. Then you have the other side that says, hey, it's our responsibility to take care of everyone. Corporations should pay more. I don't care if I pay 50% of my income to the government, so long as the government is giving me everything that I think that the government is entitled to give everyone, regardless of work ethic or contribution or whatever the hell it is. So there's still an economic factor there.
Yeah, no, that's true.
There is a social aspect that's tied into it, which then also went to a religious side of things to some extent. So now you have this big trident of a conflict that's coming at us, which is involving a lot more people than 3% of a population that's involved in a revolution. Now we're looking at like serious participation on all sides at different levels.
Yeah. So do you think it's like a because of the way the government is structured, it's kind of just going to be this way for a while? It probably forever, but like maybe not forever, but like, is it going to be like a color revolution sort of scenario, I guess?
Mike Shelby prescribes to the color revolution thing a lot, and he specifically references that color revolutions are short, they're over very quickly, and the fighting is limited. My counter argument to that is that we are in the long deep states of the building of a civil domestic conflict, because again, color revolutions kind of pop up overnight. There's always a little bit of doubt and sediment in the minds of those that are going to perform the color revolution beforehand. But
I think go on.
Between the politics and the civil unrest that is ramped up and down at times, the somewhat still successful change of power until that just is not a norm anymore, because we're already at the point where the executive branch and really even kind of the judicial branch is just doing whatever the hell it wants, and the branches of government are not holding each other to account any sense of accountability. And if they are, they're doing it for a political angle. So half the country doesn't give a shit anyway.
Yeah, I'd say the big thing missing from a color revolution in the U.S. that kind of makes me think more along your lines is just that color revolutions are kind of astroturfed. Like you said, they're very foreign influence based, and I'm not saying there isn't a lot of foreign influence in what's
Dude,
and he's gone.
Oh man,
what
There
is
he is.
going on?
I knew you were going to bring up the Chinese. That's why they cut you off.
Yeah,
yeah, that's exactly why. Fuck. You know, you want to know who's in power? Just who can't you criticize? But
the Chinese.
the Chinese, the Israelis, the Russians, not really. I kind of don't believe, based off of their abysmal performance in Ukraine, I don't think the Russians quite have the teeth that everyone thinks they do. So I'll just leave it to China and Israel.
I'm gonna also say that I don't think that China has the teeth.
I don't think America has the teeth. I think that we are not strong enough as a general population to do what America thinks that we're able to do. However, we have a significant technology advantage right now that definitely gives us the upper playing field. But I think if we had to go back to like a Ukraine-Russia style war, I think everybody's perception of like how powerful the U.S. military is would be very different because we're going to run out of smart munitions a lot faster than people think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that the U.S.
I think we're still structured for success, just based off of.
Oh, sure, the structure is of the best of the world, absolutely. I think, I mean, if you look at it from even like our conflict with Yemen during the first probably 6 months of Trump's administration, the Houthis still exist after a 6-month-long air campaign where they shot down. I think the last time I checked, it was like 27 confirmed drones, and they live in the Stone Age. And it got to the point where we were pulling naval assets out of the region because we were running out of either anti-ship or anti-air munitions to defend our naval forces. And that's because the Houthis figured out, just like the Ukrainians figured out against the Russians, that if you can outpace their ability to supply their smart systems and they have to return to an analog sense of warfare, we're not prepared or set up to do it. It's not that we can't do it, but we're not immediately ready to do it, and that has consequences. So then, what was our result? We pulled a lot of our Navy out of the strait for quite some time.
I think a lot of that too is the U.S. was like, do we really want to commit ground forces to Yemen? And the answer was just a resounding no.
Why does it seem like we have to or not? Like there's like my perception, obviously not being in the military, is just like it almost seems like kind of like I suspect that we're fighting a lot of things with like one hand tied behind our back a bit, and then sometimes you microwave people from the sky in the middle of the night, and then you're like, whoa, how come we don't do that more?
Because
rules of engagement made by politicians.
Rules of engagement
like to say the good stuff,
but we also can't like force project our best to the level at which you might think. Like when we took Maduro, the Night Stalkers, Delta Force, all of that, like we threw the best of the best we had at that operation, and it went flawless. And everyone went, see, top dogs. We would not be able to force that type or be able to stage that type of force readiness and perform at that manner on every continent that we're currently operating on. Like that is a concentrated force capability. And then you go down a little bit. Now we're at the Rangers again, still great, absolutely great asset. But then again, the Rangers there's only 30. It's crazy. I actually looked the statistic up this morning from a different conversation. There's only 3,700 active Rangers in the U.S. Army right now, and we're on 5 continents. And then you go down to your normal infantrymen. I mean, how well do you think it would have went if just a generic platoon of 11 Bravos did the Maduro raid versus Delta Force with space weapons making Maduro security team?
Oh, it's a different job, right? I mean, like it probably wouldn't have been a platoon. It probably would have been a few battalions, but I mean, there'd be no Caracas left.
No, there'd be no Caracas left. The airfields would have been seized. We would have damn near done exactly what the Russians tried to do to Ukraine.
Well, it's funny because that's what I was saying to Joe. Was like there was a MEU, or at least a ship of Marines that was parked off the coast in case things went south with the raid. It was like, dude, if they would have gone onto the beachhead, there would have been no more city left. It would have been torched.
I talked about it back in like November when this was all starting to happen, because there were pictures and reports coming out that at nighttime, the Venezuelan military was parking like large airliners on the front and ends of the airstrips in Venezuela at all their major airports, because they probably knew to some extent, not as smart as you might think, but they probably knew to some extent, hey, if they show up, they're probably going to start with a crazy air raid campaign, which is going to rock our shit because we're not up to speed with them. And then they're going to fly a bunch of boys from Fort Benning, Georgia, with their transponders turned off, or we're never going to know they're coming, who are going to seize this airfield, secure the airfield, and then they're going to use that airfield to move in armor, logistics, more troops, the whole shebang, and then Caracas is gone. Now,
All this
somehow
while the Marines and the Navy are coming in from the
are
north.
coming on the beach and
Yeah, it's
doing
just like,
various
oh, yeah,
island
yeah,
hopping.
And that's the thing with the whole thing is that
And we didn't do that. It makes me sad.
We had 1% of
I'm
the
fine with how it turned
1%
out.
that came in and snatched a president of an established country in less time than it takes you to air fry chicken nuggets. And
Yeah.
so when you look at the large scale of
It's
things,
awesome.
I think that a lot of this is like a forced projection, right? You look at and also, so here's the other take too, is that this as a forced projection, right? Obviously, like I'm sure that there was some reason to actually do it, not just like a PR campaign, but that in addition to the fact that, well, the whole thing with Ukraine and Russia has been going on. One, I mean, the chances of the U.S. getting bogged down in a war like that is so little because we also don't subscribe to that style of warfare.
We're not Russians.
Yeah, well, we're also not Russians. But the whole thing of like maneuver warfare and whatnot. But like the U.S. wouldn't get bogged down in a warfare style like that, and the fact that while this whole thing's been going on in Russia and Ukraine, the U.S. has basically been, as they ship stuff to Ukraine, whether you agree with it or not, that's not for me to decide. But they're testing out their ability to ship stuff across the world when they don't have air superiority, right? The U.S. isn't coming in with C-130s on a routine trip to Ukraine like they did with Afghanistan. They're going in when there's parts that the skies are controlled by Russians, and then the ocean is there's Russian ships and stuff, and they still are just delivering supplies. So I think that's an important combination. Is like when you think about how few people in regard to the entire U.S. military carried out the Maduro raid. Now, granted, the people that did it were like the best of the best, but the fact that in the grand scheme of things, that was like nothing. That was like a toenail clipping of the U.S. military that carried that out.
Absolutely. And it being so close to our home turf, which is something we're not used to, adds another aspect to it. Like, we technically really didn't need to move as much naval assets into the region as we did for that operation. We could have very easily just hopped over from mainland U.S. and conducted this operation with a little bit more time delay. Or just a one-day staging at our various bases throughout the Caribbean and then just jump straight into Venezuela. If anything, they just knew we were coming now. And given the fact that the government shut down for 45 days and there was Christmas and all that other kind of stuff, we waited on the operation. And eventually there probably was some aspect of, they're tired, their morale's blown, they're spending money they don't have to prepare for this imminent U.S. invasion and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if the U.S. were to get into a large-scale conventional war, I think that the U.S. would fare pretty well. And I'm not saying that out of like a bias of hoping that the U.S. fares well, because it would be, me that's in the grinder. Mm-hmm. But, you even like train with European militaries that are, allies with us, and we train regularly and stuff. And we have a lot of the same, equipment and doctrines and stuff like that that's been developed throughout the Cold War and whatnot. And you just look at some of them and you're like, how do these people even function? Like, how do these people think that they're going to function as a military entity? Mm-hmm. And I mean, we've talked about this on here before. It's like, yeah, you do that. And Gio, you were telling stories one time, I remember, about going into Eastern Europe and doing military exercises over there. And it's like, how is this even like an actual military? Like, the U.S. realistically is the bar that everybody's trying to reach.
Oh, absolutely.
And go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I think that's why unfortunately, the internal conflict is the inevitable. We have all this built up tension inside the United States with no way to unite against a foreign enemy and to put our differences aside for even a moment and try to reform some sense of community as a nation. Because one, I'm not overly convinced that we're actually going to go to Taiwan's aid when China finally pulls the trigger, if they ever pull the trigger, and I think they will. I don't think we go to Taiwan's aid. I think we swapped Venezuela for Taiwan as far as, countries of influence within each other's, hemispheres. I don't consider sandbox wars like the same style of warfare that, Russia and Ukraine is fighting, where we're fighting near peer adversaries, unless we get into a boots on the ground conflict with Iran and they mobilize about 500,000 jihadists across the Middle East. That could be a serious problem. But
Well,
I think that's why we have the issues we do here domestically. And I think it's the old saying is only a Russian can kill a Russian. Only an American can kill an American at this point.
Yeah, I think an interesting point with that too, not to dismiss everything else that you're saying, but a buddy of mine recently went to Taiwan, and he was telling me that the people there, and he's dealing with, the governments there, through his job.
Mm-hmm.
The people there are not even remotely concerned about like a Chinese invasion or anything. Like he went there and he talked to them and he had brought it up, and who knows, right? Maybe they just don't talk about it, and maybe it's like taboo to say like, yes, we are worried about this. Who knows? But he was saying that everybody he talked to there that are in the government and within like the military, their military industrial complex and whatnot, was saying like, no, but this isn't even close to being a worry of ours. And so he texted me like kind of jaded. He was like, yeah, a lot of this is just fear mongering to get more money dumped into certain industries and whatnot, which very well could be. Like I haven't been to Taiwan, so I don't know.
Sure,
what the general consensus is, but it does put things into perspective when somebody that I know and trust goes there and talks to people that he has no reason not to trust them, and they're saying like, no, this is not even something that we're worried about. And then you come home and then you see all these news headlines that are saying like, any day now, like it could happen, right? Like this is why we need more money, because if this happens, like we need to come to the aid of this country. And at the end of the day, the more money that the defense contractors get, the more money that the people that run them are getting, that are all prior colonels and generals and stuff like that have retired and got these jobs on boards of these defense contractors.
I guess the greater question to that too, and that's not to dismiss anything you just said, because that could very well be a very valid point and mindset, is this guy the same person that would have been in Kiev January of 2022 that said like the Russians are not going to invade, like they do this bullshit all the time? Like,
yeah, it could be, right? Like even I remember even talking to a buddy of mine who is Ukrainian in like January. And I was like, I don't really think anything's going to happen. He's like, and me neither.
I had a weird feeling. I was like, ever since COVID's happened, if something bad can happen, it's going to happen. And it's just how it's been since COVID. Prior to COVID, mindset was a little different. Now
Murphy's Law intensified.
Yeah. I mean, the world is, somebody said it at the beginning of this episode, but it's like everything changed with COVID and we don't know the full effects of it yet. Like, I think that's still a very real thing. Like this whole big political issue happened in the United States that changed the balance of powers and foreign policy and all of this. And then guess what? Russia invaded Ukraine. Russia invaded the second largest country in Europe, and they've been fighting for over 3 years now.
Yeah.
That's a wild concept.
And like I don't know, the whole like Russia-Ukraine conflict is such a weird thing that I think that one of the problems of it is the people that are training on their civilian side groups, and they're looking at the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and they're basing a lot of stuff around that, right? Like and you start to see people that will subscribe to these things, and they'll say like something like patrol bases are obsolete because we have drones that if you stay in one place for any amount of time, then you're just going to get drone strike.
Yeah.
And then another buddy of mine did a recent exercise where they were working as like an op against very well-known defense contractor that's making some pretty advanced drones and whatnot. And they were saying that he was saying that the only way that they could survive was through establishing a patrol base with mylar lined tarps to hide their heat signature and help dissipate some of the heat signature and whatnot, and camouflage them. And if they had to go out to bring back water or anything like that, then it was like they had a certain time crunch that they could go out and come back in, because the system would find them and whatnot. And so he's saying, like, it was actually really boring this whole time because we couldn't do anything. Like, we just had to sit here.
I mean,
so, yeah.
The whole idea that you should base what you might perceive as your coming combative conflict, whatever that might be, based on conflicts that other people are fighting in a place of the world that you're not going to be fighting in, is a little silly. Not that there's not things to be learned, but like you look at Iraq and Afghanistan. We invaded Iraq and Afghanistan with 20th century, very conventional tactics, and then we're kind of mind blown off the gate when we had to do insurgency style stuff. The same thing will be true if there's a war in the Pacific against China and its Pacific allies versus the U.S. and our Pacific allies, or a domestic conflict here in the United States where maybe there's no truly large, formal, smart weapon military power, but it's actually just a bunch of balkanized, essentially National Guards with analog weapon systems or whatever it might be. You don't really know what the economic and political influence will be on your conflict, because the Ukraine-Russia conflict is 100% driven by economic and political assets. Russia is driven by its partnerships with North Korea, Iran, and China, and they're getting their benefits based on their allies. And Ukraine is the same through NATO, and they're getting their benefits based on their allies. But it may not be the same. I mean, I've said it for 3 years now. The drone warfare aspect of Ukraine and Russia would not have ever been a thing if the rest of the planet also went to war and the commercial market went to shit. They would have never had this endless supply of DJI drones to do stuff, which then eventually led to this crazy evolution of other drone stuff. If you take away the economic, easy capitalist market from that, where they can Amazon ship DJI drones to Kiev, that shit doesn't happen. That never becomes a thought.
Yeah, and I think too that with that, like, the counter drone stuff, I think that people don't know how much of that is really out there. And I mentioned this on the show a couple of times, is that in 2019 I went to a range and we were having to schedule around contractors that had this retrofit system in Humvees that had just regular turrets on them, like M2s and stuff. And what they were doing was they were turning this thing on, and it would just sit there, and then within their chunk of time, they would randomly fly a drone across the target area. And which is just like, the Humvee was just facing the target area. So it was like they were studying, I think, within like what field of view it could engage and whatnot. But they'd fly this drone, and the system would pick it up, and it would turn the gun and shoot down this drone. Damn. And this is 2019, so this is before Azerbaijan and Armenia. This is before Russia, Ukraine. This is before any of this stuff. And the U.S. is already talking about or testing out concepts to put counter drone technology within each platoon, essentially, right? Or like a CAT team, like a combined anti-armor team, or whatever, like Humvee.
Were these weapons based around like what we consider common FPV drones in Ukraine now, or were they more kind of like larger scale military grade level drones? Like,
no, they were small drones. Like they were like man packable drones that you could just carry in a pack and toss up in the air and fly around. I'm probably gonna get suicided by 3 shots in the back of the head for talking about this, but I mean, not really, but
straight to jail.
Yeah, I don't know what the technology was. I don't know what the contractor was. I don't know any of that stuff. I just know that they were doing counter drone stuff, and they would fly multiple drones at a time, and a regular M2 Browning on a Humvee turret was shooting them down without anybody, manipulating anything.
So it was AI driven.
Maybe, who knows? I mean, I don't know what kind of system they had. I didn't even talk to them. we would sit there and we would get there a little early to the range, and we would go sit up in the range tower, and they were on like the base of the range tower with their Humvee. And we would just hang out and like, because it was cold out, so we would go up in the range tower because it was warmer, and we would be like talking through stuff because it was mostly like an instructional primer for a course, and then we would just hear what sounded like hordes of bees flying around, and then an M2 would start shooting. We were like, oh, okay. But I think that there's so much stuff too that is just like paper tiger stuff, right? Like, you even think these Chinese jets and stuff, they are showing like all the capabilities of it and what it can do and whatnot. And then you see the leaked document. I don't know if you've seen this, but there's a leaked document from the Chinese Air Force that's talking about how two of their like most advanced jets were trying to intercept U.S. F-35s, and they basically said like, yeah, there's no way that we're going to win against them. I just have it pulled up. So it says, during an interception action over the East China Sea, two J-20 fighters of the flight group had a close-range engagement with two U.S. F-35 fighters. After our lead took a merge with the U.S. lead, the U.S. fighter maneuvered probably to change direction and seized the attack position. The wingman came up to the lead's urgent aid and relieved him from the trap. In the review session, we found that the agility of our aircraft is not good enough to have close-range contests with the U.S. ones. The U.S. Air Force pilots are experienced. Their aerial command, as well as their lead wingman cooperation, are better than us. And, you compare that with the history of the Chinese military, which is largely non-existent with the modern Chinese military. Like, yes, okay, right, like Mulan was out there fighting the Khans or the Huns and stuff, but modern Chinese military, they haven't really done anything since maybe the 70s. And we talk back to how bureaucratic the U.S. military is. Like, we have doctrine on how to set up doctrine. We have doctrine on how to plan. I found a MAR admin that talks about what font and size and colors to use for MAR admins. Like, there's so much stuff that gets down to the nitty gritty and everything. And then you read about like how the Chinese military goes about things. They didn't have large scale literacy in China until fairly recently, like late 90s, early 2000s. And so the way that their op wards would have to be briefed was that their lieutenants would have to brief it in like a very poetic way to make it so it was able to be memorized by their forces that are doing stuff.
Yeah. Now
they're implementing like helmet cameras on most guys, like maybe squad leaders at the minimum. And so that way the lieutenant can watch all of these helmet cameras and make decisions, because it's very like top-down leadership, like most of these Asiatic countries.
Yeah.
So
now, most people don't realize like how much the dictatorship of China actually completely kills their power. You guys might know, but the general listener might not know. But in the past week, Xi Jinping ordered the arrest of China's two top generals, who happen to be the two remaining generals from the wars with and against the United States in Vietnam. They were the two last ranked officers with actual wartime experience.
Yeah, they're probably like 90.
What's up?
They were probably like 90 years old.
They were, yeah. I think one was in like his mid 70s and the other one was coming up on 80 or something like that. I can't even
blame him for firing them.
No, well, he arrested them supposedly because the senior of the two generals had, and this is what he claims, I don't know how true it is, he was selling Chinese nuclear secrets to America.
To the honeypot girl.
However, the Chinese military is plagued with loyalism, and this goes back to the whole part about bureaucracy with NATO-style militaries in America, is that the downfall of a lot of like Russian or Eastern Bloc militaries is that commanding officers are not rotated regularly, and there's this whole sense of created loyalism and all this kind of stuff that breaks down the chain of command and the general sense of government. And China's really bad about it because the generals stay in positions for long periods of time until the dictator decides it's time for them to go. It's not confirmed, but I saw reports that said part of the general security team got into like an actual active firefight with Chinese MPs over this, and like 20 something people were injured because they were like so diehard loyal to the general and his family, because his family helped find the People's Liberation Army. That was the significance of this general being arrested, was his grandfather helped find the PLA after the communists took over in China. So that's a whole crazy concept. But Xi Jinping, Winnie the Pooh, keeps getting rid of everybody around him with any level of competency because he's afraid he's going to get overthrown, which then now the question is, over the past week, is China really going to be ready to move on Taiwan in 2026, 2027, like the time frame has said, or is that going to get delayed any further? And can they afford it to get delayed any further before we continue to build up the Philippines and the Japan? Because Japan's new prime minister is very conservative minded and wants to remove the amendment from the Constitution that bans them from having a military other than the National Defense Force. So can China even wait to move on Taiwan, if they are going to move on Taiwan, before the rest of the Pacific is armed up against them? Now, if anybody watched Mike Shelby over the past week, you'll also see that there was a Department of Defense memo that was leaked as a part
Department of War.
What's up? Well, I'm talking about Vietnam, so not Department of War. Their Defense Department's 2024 security plan, there was a bunch of memos in it that got leaked that told like their research departments to start developing strategy and plans for fighting the United States. And this was in 2024. Vietnam's always still kind of been in the pocket of China. So the question, there's a whole bunch of questions going on in the Pacific right now as to what is actually going to happen. And is Winnie the Pooh going to stop screwing up his own military before they actually have any power to do anything?
Yeah, I mean,
they're gonna just give me command of the PLA.
they're gonna conduct it all over the Obama phone.
So true.
Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I think the Soviet Union had the same issue where like that they had to pick generals more based off of loyalty and like
They did
pragmatism and connections than like actual prowess, and it just led to problems after problems after problems.
that is the specific reason why the United States military has the policy on rotating command. It is for that like there is an actual reason why we do it, and then why now all of our Western partners do it. It is to keep loyalty to the force and to the greater mission, and not to the unit and to the commanding officer. So next time you complain about your duty station, that's why.
Yeah.
You have to change every 3 years. That's why.
For better or worse, too. I mean, I'm sure there's some times where you might be so pissed off, you'd be like, you know what, man? I wish we had a cool general, and he just said, but you know, those are the dreams that only a guy on picking up cigarette butts has, and it soon subsides.
Yeah, it's a very like, I don't know. Their whole military is kind of like an enigma to me because they don't really have any sort of combat experience, and
bro, they have combat experience.
yeah.
They have they have fist fights on the border all the time.
Oh yeah, I forgot. They have Indian campaign experience.
Yes,
which is
Dynasty Warriors IRL
sticks and stuff.
Yeah, that's such a funny
that is
thing that happens. Yeah, I don't know. I think that the like, I don't know. Maybe I've just swallowed the Kool-Aid too much, but I feel like the problem with the term near peer is that there's not really anybody else who is near peer to us.
I think it
the
also
U.S.
depends
is so far ahead of anybody in terms of not only our military experience, our existing technology, but the fact that the U.S. military since World War I has gotten to the point where they're able to adopt quicker than most other militaries, which is like key to success.
Sure. I think it depends on what kind of conflict you compare. Like the conventional war, yeah, I mean, the United States is going to have some heavy casualties trying to kill, millions of Chinamen. But I think in the end we win for sure. But what if the end goal of the conflict for the Chinese is to turn off all of our power and access to the internet and conduct sabotage attacks because they snuck in, 1.5 million PLA military age males across the border between 2020 and 2025 of January. And they spent 30 years infiltrating every aspect of our technology and critical infrastructure.
Yeah. I mean, the fifth generational warfare stuff is huge. And like, it's kind of a joke, right? To say like, oh, China's going to take over everything, so don't buy a Baofeng, a Hollow Sun, et cetera, et cetera. But it also kind of is real because you think of how...
Look what the Mossad did to Hezbollah.
Oh, with the pagers, are you talking about?
They spent 15 years infiltrating and creating this whole Ponzi scheme of essentially knockoff Motorola pagers, which they create that were built in Eastern Europe under the premises of, I think it was a Japanese or Vietnamese tech company, which then went to, Lebanon. And these little bastards were packed full of like a microgram of C4 for all of these years. And they're just carrying it around all the time. And then one day the Mossad was like, I guess everybody's pager's going to explode. And then like half of the Hezbollah forces now have, blunt force injuries in a sense, or blast injuries, because the fifth generation warfare was just that good from Israel.
Yeah.
Do you think the Chinese have been doing that to all of our infrastructure?
Yeah. I think that's such a huge problem, is the just like the fifth generational warfare stuff, which, that starts to really, when you spin that around, and this might just be like, I don't want to open up the floodgates for another whole long conversation, but when you talk about, groups, right, civilian private groups and whatnot, it's like, what's the end goal? Like, what are you training for? What do you see as being a likely, enemy or whatever? And I think that a lot of people neglect the technical side of things. But yeah, that I don't want to get all into that.
I like to end the show. I like when shows are ended with a question and like a little bit like a lineup, something for the future. So, like, what are you training for exactly? And technology is probably going to be a huge part of that, I assume. I mean,
it's impossible to avoid it at this point.
We can go into the, like I said, I would love to go into this. So I think perhaps we'll cut her there for that. And then if we want, Jeremy, you're more than welcome. Keep talking about this technology stuff. But I'm like super stoked the way this went, because it's like, man, there's like, I just forgot how much is going on.
It takes a lot of like mental brain power to not only know what all is going on, but also to be like informed of what's going on.
Yeah. I'd like to probably
and a lot of people can't do that. Like it'll burn them out and like not be good for their mental health.
That's true. That is true.
Look at everybody that was just watching the Telegram videos of Russia-Ukraine drone footage when it happened.
Yeah.
Like that mixed with COVID and like not talking to anybody. I feel like a lot of people are like fried their brains so bad to an irreversible point.
Yes. Watching Russians and Ukrainians die like while scrolling reels locked in a house was probably damages your mental health.
I will leave this for everyone as far as technology, and we can wrap it up. Don't buy Baofangs for your duty radios.
Correct.
Leave those for the communists so you can conduct easy signals intelligence.
There you go.
There.
A hard truth.
That is good. All right.